That's what I'm talking about. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Arvanauts. Welcome to a Saturday night stream. It is about 7:48 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for the critical hit, 362. That's a very oddly specific number. Thank you, Eka off X5. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody, to September 19th, 2020. It is 7:48, just about to be 7:49 p.m. Eastern. And welcome to episode 29 of Masters of the Dungeon. I am very excited to be with you and very excited to have my friend and guest with me as well, but we will talk about that in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, I do want to remind everybody about ways to support us here on the channel. If you haven't done so already, please follow us here on the channel. Please check out our YouTube channel where you can see past broadcasts of this and other streams with the !ArvTube. !ArvCord is our Discord channel, which is always a good and happening place to be. So please join us over there. !ArvTweets is my Twitter, where I will always tweet about stuff when I'm going live and talk about streaming and gaming and music and various other things, and also, playing games and writing and teaching and family, and also a fair bit of politics lately because 2020 is a thing. Thank you for the host, Rising Tides. I appreciate it. Good to see you. And then we have, of course, the website for all of that, which is arvaneleron.com. On the financial side, !Arv Shop is the merchandise area. You can get Adventures of Middle-earth stuff there. You can get Infinity Beyond stuff there. And if all goes well, you'll be able to get Esper Genesis stuff there as well soon. So please make sure that you check out that place because that also supports the channel, as does the Patreon, !Arvtreon, sitting at 22 patrons, $2.25 per month. Again, that's the money that we use to fund a lot of things, which go right back into the channel and also assist with my writing, which also affects the channel. And the more that we get into the Patreon, the more that I can increase pay for the Arvocalists, the more that I can move us towards another Arvanite Idol contest, a Talisman tournament, various other things. And you get individually cool stuff as well, so please consider jumping on board for that. And of course, we have the sub button. Currently, I don't know exactly how many subs I have because, again, they're not showing me subs very easily. I have to go rooting around to find out what the hell it is. But I believe we're somewhere around the low 60s for subs, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the low 60s to mid 60s. So please consider jumping on board to support us there as well, because again, custom sub badges, emotes, and of course inspirations for the players, and you can get inspirations through the Patreon as well. Then of course, yes, so am I excited. Believe me, Echo, I know, and I'm incredibly excited for you folks to see the physical copy of Forbidden Library as well. And the Jelinek stuff should be coming. The hardcover. Yeah, I was going to say, original. I was like, wait, the print should be there for Jelinek. But yes, the hardcovers, man. I'm so excited about the Icarus and Jelinek stuff, which reminds me, !Icarus for details about that. The release date for that is November 10th. And I want to talk about something else relating to Athos Arts in just a moment. But so we have that. We have !Library for Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library. It is available on DriveThru RPG. And that is going to be awesome. That's doing very well in digital. It's going to be awesome in print. I cannot wait. !Greyshade KS for my Greyshade Kickstarter, which is going to be launching February 2nd of 2021. And !BLM Black Lives Matter, an extremely important thing that we have pushed and will continue to push. I also want to note very quickly that we did make the announcement a couple of weeks ago that Maurice Broadus has got a new anthology that he is editing for Athos Arts, which is called In This Moment. And we are very, very pleased about that. We've started to do the Kickstarter mock-ups for that, and we're going to be announcing pretty soon. I keep saying we. I'm just contributing something to it. I'm not a big part of it, except that I may have a story in it. But I'm definitely going to be promoting it. And the Athos Arts people, of course, are wonderful people, as you all know. And this is a big anthology, folks. I really feel like this is an anthology that really is the right one for the moment. We recorded some aspects of the Kickstarter video today. The Kickstarter mock-up page looks great. Emily did most of that, and I think it's going to be awesome. And so I'm very excited for that anthology. And the Kickstarter for that is likely to be going live next month. Specific dates, obviously, are up to Athos to announce, but I wanted to mention that is something we'll be wanting to think about. So keep that aware, be aware of that, because that's going to be pretty awesome. And it won't just be stories, by the way. We're talking fiction, we're talking nonfiction. We may even have some graphic novel illustrated stuff going in there. We'll have poetry as well. So it's going to be stuff that's not just, a bunch of stories, which are great too, obviously, but other stuff too. So again, it feels very kind of prescient given the situation that we're facing right at the moment, which I'm going to talk about, but only very briefly tonight. I talked about most of it yesterday. But if you look on my Twitter feed, you will find there is a highlighted video on Twitch that talks about my feelings about the current situation with the Supreme Court and so on, and hopefully that's something which you can check out for yourselves. The last thing I want to mention here is in answer to the question that Echo asked at the beginning, and yes, I did get my new memory from Corsair, and I have installed it, and both sticks of memory do seem to be working. So my gaming computer is back up to 32 gigs of memory now. So I just have to send back the old defective memory and then get refunded on my card. And if that happens, then I will be fairly pleased with how Corsair handled it. Although, you know, it'll have been 3 weeks basically from when the one stick went bad to when I ended up getting new. But given that we're doing this in the middle of a pandemic, etc., it could be a lot worse. So yes, the memory is in there. It's working. Knock on wood. Let's hope that it keeps working and doesn't fail. But at least this new memory does indeed work. And so, yeah, so that's good. And hopefully we'll be able to continue with that as we go forward. But now the time has come to bring on my friend and awesome guest who's got a bunch of stuff going on. There are plans, folks. There are plans right now that we can see. And that is, you can see Little Red Dot, who is with us here, is back in her accustomed seat around the round table, so to speak. You know, the seat perilous has now been filled once again by Little Red Dot. And just before I introduce Dot, I just wanted to mention one thing quickly, because then I'm going to let Dot speak about this to the extent that she wants to. As I said, I talked about the situation with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg yesterday. Deeply sad. She was a wonderful jurist and a trailblazer and an all-around impressive person in so many ways. And it was a big blow. And it was obviously a big blow as well to the body politic and to the country that Dot and I both live in at the moment, that's going through quite a bit of trouble at the moment. But I talked about ways to deal with this yesterday on that video, which I encourage people to look at if they want. What I'll simply say tonight is I really, really want people, if you have not already done so, to register to vote. I'm going to be pushing this very, very heavily. Yes, there are other things that need to be done. Yes, there are things involving getting people around you to vote, which is really important, about making sure that voting rights for others are not suppressed, but increased and made more available to people, etc. So there's other things you can do as well. But the most important thing that has to happen is to not sit this out because you think that both sides are the same, but they are not. You're dealing with one clearly dysfunctional and fascist group at this point that is going one way, and then you have a group that, for all of its flaws, still believes in basic things like the rule of law and general rights. This is not a choice now. And so it's very serious, and I think it's important that we look at it with great seriousness. That said, I also think we can get past it for reasons that I've said before. I'm not going to talk about it beyond that, though, other than to say that, because I've already said what I wanted to say. So having said that, now I'm going to hand things over to say hello to Dot. I hope everything is well with you. How are you doing? And then if you have anything you want to add to that, no pressure, but you can if you wish. So any feelings of yours are welcome.
Well, I cried yesterday.
Understandably.
If you love a woman in your life, you'll vote. If you love a person of color in your life, you will vote. If you love yourself, you will vote. It's a scary fucking time, y'all. It's a really scary time. Because if we don't vote, then you inevitably not only give up the right to be able to do that, because you've chosen not to. Yep. Even if you think it's your choice, it is, I hate to say, a bad one. But it is.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're opting out of caring about your country, about the people that live here, about the children that are supposed to inherit it, about the people in the land we've taken it from. So many things, that words I could put into sentences and say. But the fact of the matter is, sitting it out makes you just as guilty. It makes you just as guilty.
Yep.
Especially when you have the ability, the chance, right? Like, if a superhero had the power to save people and he just stood on the street corner and didn't because he chose not to get involved, he's still guilty. He's guilty of not helping and guilty of not making change.
Yep.
Because they could. So I'm encouraging people right now on my channel to register to vote. If you show me proof in a private message that you've registered to vote. You get a, like, depending on what show I'm doing when you show me, different things can happen. You can make me do stupid stuff like, chicken dance on screen, or like if it's one of my TTRPG shows, you can donate a roll 20 or an advantage of some kind to the players by proving that
This
you
is a
have
good
voted.
idea. I should think about that. That's a good idea.
Yep. Register to vote. Show me your proof. A screenshot, an email, your ballot in the mail that you have. You don't have to show me a filled out one, but like your ballot or whatever has come in.
Show me who you voted for.
Show me who you voted for, and then you can have that advantage. No, I will stay bipartisan, but I can tell you that. But yeah, that's the yeah. You can come make me do the chicken dance on my morning show by showing me you registered to vote.
I tell you what, show me that you registered to vote on my channel, and I can send you over and make Dot do the chicken dance. Like, wait a minute, why is like you've done the chicken dance 700 times? Like, well,
yeah.
Oh man,
yeah,
no, that's a
it's
good
just one
idea,
of those things. I think it's just we have such an obligation to make it matter.
Yeah, we do.
And to look at the people in our lives that think it doesn't matter, and it's not about convincing them, because you're never going to, but it's about showing them why it's important.
Yeah.
Right? And they have to choose on their own to vote, to register to vote. That is their choice. But you can show them the importance of it, or help in some way. Get out there. Tell somebody. Have you asked every one of your family members, have they registered to vote? Because if you haven't, you can.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
I know the theater that I work for, we're officially we have decided, since the space is currently not being used, and we have it, to make it a polling station.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
So we've added a polling station.
Awesome.
So the theater's lobby is now, it's already being renovated to be social distanced, but it's going to be ready for voting time. So we're going to start with that. And we've been trying to do a lot of interactive stuff. There's going to be a day where people can come register on site to vote if they don't have like technology and the means of like doing it otherwise. So we're to encourage people to vote. Like, we're doing all kinds of things because lines are going to be long. My hope is that lines are fucking long. I'm sorry. It's not past 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. It's not past 10 o'clock. I hope those lines are so long. Let me tell you guys, the theater was like, okay, if lines are long, we're going to buy pizza for people. We're gonna entertain them. We have a troupe coming out that does balloon, because you have to stay quiet and you have to be nonpartisan. Like, that's kind of how it works.
Right.
Like, our theater cannot make a stance. We have to maintain not bipartisan. So we brought balloon artists out, and they're gonna be making like hats and balloon animals, because it has to stay quiet too, because we're in like a residential neighborhood. So, but
that's
yeah,
awesome.
like, we're just do something. Now is the freaking time. Like, if there has ever been a time, everybody, to like get up and make. If every one of us influenced just one person to understand the importance of voting,
right,
we could change this entire system.
Right.
We could flip it. If each one of us gave somebody a ride to a polling station. Or we paid for stamps to mail in your registration because people can't afford them.
Yep.
Like, that stuff is so small and makes such a big difference on such a big scale.
Yep.
Sorry, we can get off on a tangent.
No, you're right. I mean,
yeah.
and it's about making a plan to be able to know how to vote in those circumstances. I was thinking about what Arudinel said about voting on October 2nd. That's when my ballot shows. It's about making a plan. And the thing I want to say about this too is that this is not going to be, even if it's more complex than it should be, and it should not be complex. It should be an easy matter of registering to vote, showing up and voting. It should be basic in a democracy. But the thing I want to say is all of you do way more complicated stuff to get over and watch this show than anything you're going to be asked to do. Like how many of you are like, okay, I need this console and I want to play this game with this particular resolution with this thing, like with the,
Yep.
like seriously, like this comparatively, that as compared to this, or how many of you have spent time in games doing fetch quests and this stuff that's like tedious as all hell,
and look,
as opposed to going and voting for a half hour to 45 minutes.
Look, USS Norway, you can sit here and play devil's advocate about my metaphor all you want, but the point was made.
Yeah.
You can sit here and try to make a metaphor about Spider-Man and whether or not he should have stepped up that day. What I'm telling you is, if you have the ability, you should, because voting is important.
Yeah.
Much more important than the hypothetical of Spider-Man saving his grandfather.
Yeah. Don't get caught up in that. I mean, the thing to be clear about is that the creating a superhero who needs to make up for the flaws of something before. Thank you, JLC, at tier 1.
Thank you.
Have a great September also. I hope you're doing well, JLC. I think about
those
you.
subs. It is September.
It is September, that's right. And I'm always grateful. And JLC, as I mentioned before, works at a pharmacy and is an essential worker. So I've been talking about for a while about.
Thank you
about,
for
thank
what you do.
doing
Thank
that,
you all
seriously.
of you essential workers that are out there.
But yeah,
names.
don't get caught up in it, Norway, because the point is, and I know you're just joking around about the metaphor, but honestly, I mean, so if you asked Spider-Man, right? Let's just take the metaphor for a minute. If you asked him, well, you get to be a superhero, but you lose your uncle, he would have chosen not losing his uncle.
Correct.
Right. So the point is, he made a silver lining out of it. He learned a lesson from it, but you don't have to learn a lesson from that because we already learned it in 2016. We've already learned it at every other election where those who don't vote are governed by those who do. And so if you don't want to be one of those people, we've learned that lesson. And so you don't need to make those same mistakes that were made before. So I want to be clear here that, you know, this is deadly serious, and this is not a matter of, you can't sit this one out. You just can't.
Yeah.
This is too important. And for those of you who are not U.S. citizens, I said last night, please, you know, hang with us. We're doing the best we can. But I also want to say that those of you who are, I hope, most of you living in some democratic systems, need to be voting in your own systems under whatever circumstances you want. Don't end up like the U.S. ended up in terms of having that be even a question. But then secondly, you know, we are all in this together. So if there's a friend of yours who you know is from the U.S. and they're like, I don't know if I even want to do it, you also have a voice and can encourage them and be like, listen, what do you think happens to your country if you don't vote, right? So you are capable of using your voice to persuade people around you, whether you're doing it gently, whether you have to do it more like the coach getting in the face of the player. It depends on what you know about your friends and family, but all of us have a role to play in that regard, and it really is important. You know, in Dot's case, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about is theater, and what theaters lose, what arts organizations lose when people don't vote and don't care, you know, don't think about the funding, and everything is just about
many jobs lost.
Yeah, jobs
when you
lost.
Defund the arts
and the entertainment and learning and sort of the value of humanity, of becoming a better human, that gets lost when arts organizations are not able to be funded.
Technically, in the United States, the categorization for an arts organization to be like a not-for-profit is education, because they believe that all art is educational.
Right.
We fall under an education, which is like the one thing that our society cannot stand to lose right now.
God, no. I mean, we're in a way
we can't
reaping the benefits.
To lose our education and our connection to culture and history and maths and sciences, because when they start to take away your education, they start to take away the knowledge that you need to make your own choices.
Right. Exactly.
Your own educated choices.
Right.
So that it's easier for them to continue to manipulate a system.
That's right. So just don't let your voice and your vote be taken away, and also don't let the voice and vote of those who are not able to do so because they're too young, because they can't get to the poll or do absentee ballot. You know, all of those people, you're fighting for them too, and that's what a vote represents. And so I know that it sounds like, you know, we're beating the drum on this, you know, over and over again, but there's nothing more important right now if we want to get out of everything else that we're dealing with. So that said, and I agree with you totally, Trisha Matz, for sure. That being said, let's get into the show proper. It is walking the hill up to the polling station would not recommend a heavy meal, but that's gotta feel, Halligan, I have this image of like people walking up and stuff, and like, you know, like just this kind of like, I am going to vote, you know, like I'm putting in the effort.
But you know what, Trish, I think you bring up a good point, that there is a privilege to being able to vote, because there are so many people that can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I grew up in a community where it is so impoverished that people don't live on paved roads, like a lot of unpaved roads, which here in the States is, you know, depending on where you are, pretty unheard of. And people can't get to and from, where the polling stations totally profile people. This makes it so hard and so difficult. Why a state like the one that I'm in, where I'm in a blue city, in a red state, that is dominantly red because it's always been that way. Because people don't have the money to get where they're going. But if we have that privilege, how do we help others overcome obstacles?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's I please don't misunderstand me, Trish. I don't think we're misunderstanding each other, but
No, no,
please don't
no, no, definitely not. I think you make all great points.
yeah, like please don't misunderstand me, Trish. The point I agree with you entirely that it is not because of obstacles that people face with jobs and circumstances and everything else. I know about that very well, trust me. I know what my parents went through. So my point is, if there should be no reasonable excuse based upon those who were capable of doing it, right? If you're in a position where you're able to vote, saying I'm not going to do it because both siderism or whatever the case would be, that's where we're running into a problem where you're not exercising and using your privilege, and you're making that much harder for people who are not able to do it because they're working all day, working 5 jobs, whatever else. I mean, it's, I think election day should be a national holiday. It's ridiculous that it's not. There's so many reasons we should be paying people not have to work on those days. I mean, again, it's absurd that we don't do this, but that's a question for another day. But my point simply is that as a person who is doing, when you have the privilege to vote, and a vote which literally millions of people have died for over the centuries, it is critically important that you do it. So yeah, in no way am I making any suggestion about, and I hope we're clear on that. I totally agree with you, Trish. My point simply is that if you have that privilege, it's critically important that you exercise it, is my point. So
absolutely,
yeah. So all right. That said, though, let us get into
Politics
the rest of what we've got going on.
Gaming hat on.
Gaming hat on. So I want to start as I usually do by asking. Your previous point was speaking from privilege. If you can vote and don't,
yes.
you deserve no respect. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. 100%. Totally true. So let's talk a little bit about these campaigns here. And I want to start actually, Dot, by asking you, as we usually do, about anything cool that has happened in a campaign lately that you want to highlight. They don't have to be Rising Tides, but in this case...
I was about to say, they're not when you're this, Dot, but I'm just trying to help the audience know that I can shift gears if I need to. Okay, something cool that happened in a campaign
since we last spoke, because of course Rising Tides sat in
spoke.
for you last month. So
that's true. Yes, thank you, Rising Tides, for doing that. I heard. I went back and watched, and it was a great chat. Man, I got so much stuff going on right now.
I know you got a whole embarrassment of riches
going on right now. Things that have a cool thing that has happened. I mean, can we just talk about us accidentally wandering in and finding the skull in Strahd? I feel like that's really a key character moment.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one. Y'all, I'm pretty sure we spent 4 or 5 games wandering around the Amber Temple, lost, so damn lost, and we spend 2 episodes making this plan, this giant plan of how we're going to stalk Strahd's castle, we're going to trick him, we're going to do all this stuff, only so we can sneak in and steal this skull, which we have absolutely no idea where it is.
Yeah.
In the entirety of Ravenloft, it's like literally a needle in a haystack, right? So the plan is
it's a big ass needle, but
it's a big needle and a big castle.
Yeah, bigger haystack, yes. Yes.
But the plan was distract him. You just have to distract him long enough for us to find it. And so we did it. We wandered into this castle. We were there we went down a couple floors. We actually what happened was John's character took a tumble, fell.
Yeah.
And because we went down to save him, or I went down to check on him, we ended up on the floor, and we just were like, do, and he's like, I don't know, you want to check this door? And I was like, I don't know if my navigation's correct. This is actually deeper into the temple, so this is the way we should go. And so we opened up this one door, and there it is, just hanging on the wall, clear as day. We couldn't have been there not even 20 minutes. Like, our characters had only been in the castle 20 minutes. And we just wandered in on one of the most important sought after items that Strahd loves. And so it was a pretty wonderful moment. Both of it's good when both of your players are like, yes!
Yeah, no, it cracked me up. That was actually the
know?
moment I was gonna cite for me, because I thought, hey, what's up, Shadowed? I was gonna make that same comment, because for me the best part was as I was describing the room, and I could see both of you sort of like,
we were like, bones?
Yeah, because I was like, exactly, because I'm like columns of bones. I'm like, the table's bones. You're like, a skull is a bone, and then I'm just like, there's a big dragon skull. You're like,
fireplace.
Dragon skull. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, you totally trolled us for a while, because both of us was like, okay, lots of skulls, that table.
There's
and
fibias and tibias, and there's
that's really great. What's over the fireplace, Arv?
There's pelvic bones, and shut the hell up. Where's the skull? Oh man, it was the best. And then that and the fact that then trying to deal with, because at that point you had triggered the heart, and you kind of decided that it must have been the heart that sort of warned Strahd that something was up. And
Yes.
so Rob's outside with Mason trying to deal with, like, he's fighting off like the like creatures
Bats.
and like vampire spawn and whatever.
Poor
And Strahd is
Bob.
sitting there, and you just hear him crying, like Strahd's yells and screams. And you're like, oh crap. And you're trying to get this skull like
Giant
down.
skull.
It's a heavy skull.
Huge.
150 pounds something or other, 200 pounds, whatever it is. And they're like trying to like get this skull out the door and down the way. And so like Alec and Django are like carrying this thing, and again,
Agatha sacrificed her umbrella.
sacrificed her umbrella, and that was my favorite, one of my favorite parts
Like,
too.
"Goink."
Dude, put the thing in the door and then just boom, and just gets blown open. You're like, well, shit.
Well, I
like
tried.
it was. Oh man,
I'm just the druid, y'all.
it was really funny.
Yeah, it was a pretty weird, and we ran into the rest of the party. The plan was for us to scour opposite ends of this place to try to find it, and we ended up crossing each other's paths. Like,
Yep.
we ended that room. We opened
And I
up
didn't
doors on
railroad
the
it
opposite
at
side of
all.
that room.
They just found their way there. Weller and Alec went down that way. You guys
was
went up
crazy.
the other way. I'm like, well, this
It was
worked
like
out nicely.
cinematic in that, right? Like, we both opened, like, we all opened the doors and like looked at each other and we're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Skull, move! You know,
Right, because
like-
that's true. Because Weller and Alec went through the door where it was above them. So
Above
you're
them.
like pointing, and they're like, oh, like right above is the skull. Oh,
So
man.
now we get to see, hopefully it'll be just as cinematic and luck will be on our side as we try to move this giant skull across the land back where it
While
belongs.
Strahd is like, give me the skull. You know, like, yeah, it's gonna be
Right,
it's gonna
he's
be
gonna,
great.
it's gonna be cute.
It's going to be great. And I should say, by the way, to chat in general, that it is looking increasingly possible that if all goes well, depends on what happens in this next session here in September, but it is possible that if this session goes okay, and then the first session in October goes well, that we might be able to wrap up Curse of Strahd in a marathon session on Halloween night, which to me is like, I mean, I will absolutely be smug as all hell if that happens. I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna be like, yeah, like I'm so. It would be great if we could actually manage that, because it would be sick. Oh yeah,
It'd be
man,
so
exactly. Spooky.
spooky.
That's it. Oh man, I can't wait. Anyway, but we will see how that goes. But yes, that was exactly that whole moment I was going to talk about also, because oh man, that was super great. So okay, the question that I have for you, and I think this is a good one for Dot. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's the topic for discussion that I want us to talk about today, and it has to do with the running of multiple campaigns at once. Because you and I both do this, right? You and I both GM multiple campaigns, and sometimes, in your case in particular, play in and GM and produce. And I produce and GM and very seldom play these days, but whatever, these campaigns. And so I've been wondering about the way that these things cross over, like how one thing kind of flows into each other. And so what I want to ask you is, now you did that partly this because you love playing games, and because, it's also out of necessity. It also builds up your brand and your, prominence in the field and whatever. But what I wanted to ask is, do you feel, or can we talk a little bit about the benefits of running multiple campaigns, how we can avoid some of the pitfalls, let's say, in dealing with them? And is it something that, if you could, would you want to do that? Like, would you rather just have a single campaign that you focus on if you had your druthers and it didn't affect your life in other respects? Or would you rather have this many campaigns that you're having to juggle, but it's giving you different experiences? So I want to ask about the multiple
I
campaign
mean,
GM.
I
let us know.
genuinely don't think that I could ever just go to a single game. ever
Okay.
again. Like, I don't think that I could do it, because I've learned so much by having the multiple experiences. It's why I'm not ever just a GM or just a player or just a producer. Like, I've worn all the hats differently, because I think I get something different out of each one.
Okay.
Right? Because there's, I also don't always play with the same group of people. I think that's important. For me, at least, it's nice to have just like variation at the table, and to see what these people are, like what each person brings. Because when I'm at a table as a player with a GM, I learn a lot. I learn a lot from my GMs. Like, I, as a player, learn from them.
Oh yeah.
And then as a player, I learn what I need from a GM, not just from them. Because what if they're not giving me what I need as a player? Or I play a campaign and I'm thoroughly uninspired.
Yep.
I still learn a lot from that. I learn, what didn't I get? Was my GM not listening? Did they not care about my character? Did I not give as a character what was needed at the table to prompt my GM or help my GM understand where my
That's true. You learn
my
from the
interests
failures
lie.
as much as the successes, right?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right. So I think you can't. I can't just go down to just one. I mean, let's be real. I've been there before where I only had my one D&D game, and that was what was like. This is before I was streaming, of course, but
Right.
there's that thing, and that's what we do. But I think there's just something for me that I find so fulfilling about playing different kinds of games, because every different kind of game, again, you're learning something, right? It's a different system. So some things, like with Fate, I find that I don't ever care about mechanics. It's about the evolutionary change of my character because my entire character is built up on a series of phrases.
Yeah.
Right? And these phrases define them, and it's what helps me make the decisions and choices. So when my character levels up, I don't get XP to spend to buy a bunch of new crap. I get a chance to change my phrase, to alter, to move, to differentiate my aspect. And so when that happens, I'm playing a very different kind of character arc than, say, something that's a little crunchy like VTM.
Yeah.
Right, where you've got giant dice pools and you're pulling in a lot of different things and you've got all of these abilities and powers. But then the World of Darkness, where VTM is set, is inspiring in and itself, even though it's a crunchier game.
Yeah.
So something that I still enjoy about it. And so I think that you actually, again, and I think this is a person to person. For me, I tell stories. I've always told stories. Even before I was gaming, before I came to Twitch, I was a storyteller. I wanted to be an actor. I was a writer. I was an artist. I tell stories. And finding a way to tell different kinds of stories, different kinds of ways, with different kinds of people is everything I ever wanted.
Yeah.
So for me, I can't go back to being like, well, I guess today I'm going to tell this story.
Yeah.
Right? It's why I left theater. Because the autonomy of the actor is pulled out of theater. There is none. Here's your script. This is what you're going to read every night for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to say. We're going to tell you where to stand, what you're going to wear, how you're going to do a thing. And for me, that is not what I was looking for. I didn't want to be a vessel for somebody else's words.
Yeah, you were more in
else's work.
Yeah, you're more in the director's chair, it seems to me. I mean, like, and the writer's
Partially,
chair, but
the writer's chair. That's what I loved about TTRPG, because it allows me to be all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It allows me to create the character as I see it within somebody else's world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that I don't even know, or if I could fathom the concept of going back to just a single game.
Well, you know, because the reason I bring this up is because I mean, I was thinking the other day about how different, in a way, because it was, as people know, it was my birthday recently, and I was thinking about the fact that I started playing D&D essentially back when I was 12, 13, and so a long time ago now. So literally, like, I mean, I'm 48, so 35 years ago, I started playing. And it struck me that when you first start playing, I remember playing very well. I was playing during recess on 6th grade of Keep in the Borderlands. It was the first ever experience that I had. I didn't know anything about this. No, not 1806, years Norway. It was 1985. Thank you very much. Jeez.
Norway with the sex.
It was back in the day, and I used to say indubitably I would like to play
when
some...
I walked uphill in the snow without shoes on.
And I said, you, sir, are a cad, and I will strike back at you with my 20-sided die, which was made out of all brass, let me tell you. No, but like, when, so when I'm playing back with that at that time, I didn't know anything about what I was doing in terms of what this was. I was like exploring a dungeon. I don't know what the hell I was doing. And, but it was a one-time thing. And I remember it happened and I'm like, wow, this is wild. And then I ended up not that long afterwards, probably only a couple of months afterwards, actually getting the Red Box, the famous Red Box D&D with the picture of the guy charging the red dragon, which is incredibly iconic with art by Larry Elmore. And like, that was the thing that really got me into increasingly that kind of play. And even then I was DMing, like I was lucky to, this is way pre-internet. I mean, so I'm lucky to I basically played with my dad and my mom, for like a couple of, for at least a few months. And then eventually when I got older, I had, enough friends in this small town that I lived in that we could get together a game. And that was it. And I played like one game and we would play maybe once a week and we would play, 4 hours or so, I guess, but it was once a week. It obviously wasn't streamed and that was the experience. And then in college, I got to play a little bit, but not very much, quite frankly. Graduate school, I was only able to play occasionally. And I had not played much D&D at all, actually, when I started streaming on Twitch for a long time, when I started streaming on Twitch, and then started streaming, with a friend of mine from another channel, just on his channel, and then began to build it up where I'm like, let me try it on my channel. And now, obviously, tabletop has again become a big focus. So now I have 5 separate campaigns that I personally run, and multiple, 2 other campaigns, Emberwind and Soundclash the Clampdown, and other things that I run. And different genres too, right? We're talking Middle Earth, we're talking Dungeons and Dragons, we're talking space opera with Esper Genesis. These are all different kind of feels and qualities of game, and so it has changed a lot, is my point. And I think back to what it was like when we only were focusing on the one thing, the one sort of single unitary campaign that we had to worry about. And how now a lot of what we're doing is balancing and juggling these things, and learning, as you say, from each of the campaigns. But that leads me to ask, are there narrative threads that you draw from one game to the next? Because we're all living in the world, and there is a zeitgeist in the world that we pick up on, right? A kind of a sense of a feeling that everyone's dealing with in the world at large. So I'm wondering if, as you play these different campaigns, before we get into the pitfalls, as you play them, are you drawing narrative threads from, VTM games into, one-shot D&D games, into the podcast that you play? You know what I mean? Like, are there different threads that are pulled across as a player or GM? Or do you keep them as very distinct in your mind? I know you learn from them as in general, but I'm talking about.
I think I keep them rather distinct. I don't really do a lot of through stuff, but I do. So again, I really like to play with how stories are told, right? So for example, right now we're raising funds for the 3rd season of Coriolis campaign that I've been running over on Unmade Gaming. We were going to have 4 months off because none of us could come back and do it until January. So we didn't want things to die, so we decided to do this fundraiser. And once a month, for every month leading up to it, we're doing a one-on-one shot with one of the characters.
Cool.
So it's like, because they're going to do a year's time jump, and I was like, well, let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
So instead of just being like, okay, we're going to focus character, I'm using each one of their one-shots and working backwards down the timeline. So the first one we did was 9 months out from the point of the end of season 2. And then 6 months out, and then 3 months out. We're working backwards because we're introducing a new character that they would have met right at the end of season 2.
Yep.
So what we're doing is building towards that character. So I like to change how a narrative is told. Or, for example, that same game. During season 2, I did a one-shot of Coriolis on my channel for Sunday Funday and decided that I wanted to tie in canon to the game I was running on Unmade Gaming.
Okay.
So their actions directly impacted that campaign. So you could go watch the one shot and get this little nugget of extra information that you're not going to find anywhere else.
That's neat.
So I like to do a lot of that stuff, really change how our narrative is told or break the way in the mold. Actually, when we get to it, I'll tell you what I'm doing for my Aliens campaign, because I think that's going to be really interesting. A lot of people really love the new Aliens RPG. The big thing that people are, that I've heard a lot of the feedback is, it plays as a really great one shot, but how do you run a deadly campaign, something that's this deadly in a campaign? So I'm actually running a campaign of six sessions together, sitting down for 6 sessions. And so I had to really think about, how do you run a deadly campaign over a series of 6 games using it. And so I can kind of talk about that. But I like to tell, sometimes not all stories are told linearly. I think about some of my favorite stories. I always think about the first time I saw Memento. That movie blew my mind.
Sure, yeah.
Not that it was revolutionary or anything, but it was it was molding and changing the way, the literal angle at which a story is told, and you didn't even realize it. It made sense, and you didn't even realize it till the end.
Yep.
That's very cool.
Yep. And I'll add on to that to say that I love the intersection of perspectives from which stories are told also, so that you can have similar tales that are being reflected in different ways that we look at things. One of the classic examples of that I like to talk about that's done very well is, anyone who's familiar with the Bourne series of films will know that after the 3rd film, which was the Bourne Ultimatum, which was the last one with Matt Damon for a while, there was one that was brought forward with Jeremy Renner, who played this one, and it was the Bourne, the Bourne Legacy, which is pretty good too. And the Bourne Legacy literally has overlaps where it's showing what's happening and you remember it if you've seen the other film, and it's showing what's happening, but it's doing it, of course, from Jeremy Renner's character as opposed to Jason Bourne's character, which does two things. A, it's a very cool Easter egg and feeling for those people who have seen the previous one, where you're like, oh wow, that was going on. But secondly, it also gives you this sense of this very deep field of players in the world, of characters, of stories that are going on that we don't usually talk about. Because a lot of times with a unitary story, we have a tendency to think of the world is just what surrounds this particular person at a particular time. So we watch The Matrix and we say, here's Neo, and it's the world of The Matrix is basically how Neo perceives it, because he's her point of view
character. Planning a Matrix campaign.
Oh, well, see. This is what that's no. Wow, check you out. This is just all right. Look, what's happening with Dot here is Dot's just like,
I'm just taking all my favorite things.
I'm doing Aliens. We're allowed to say, I believe, say that you are playtesting the Dune RPG.
I'm
right?
playtesting tomorrow, in fact.
So I'm just saying, Matrix, Aliens, and Dune. So I just see someone who's just leaping on the bandwagon. No, I'm just kidding. Of all these,
I am. I really am. But The Matrix trilogy, that one should be really interesting. I haven't decided what setting I want to put that in, like exactly what I'm gonna skin it on, but I have a really big want to tell a series of stories inside of the Matrix world, much like the Animatrix.
Right.
That affect the three, like, don't change the movies. You're not playing as Neo or anybody that's on board, like, or as part of Morpheus's crew. But I love the idea of other humans out there still trying to make things right?
Yeah.
Like, even if you think about what's that the Final Flight of the Osiris, that's the one where they get the word to Zion that the Sentinels are burrowing down, and all it is like a blip in the movie. It's a literal like blip, but these people gave their lives so that everybody else could know they were coming.
Right, exactly. And this is almost the way that we deal with things, for example, with Rogue One in the Star Wars universe, where Rogue One is about that thing where it's like, how many Bothans died for this, and everyone, that's like a throwaway, and then that becomes
by far the best, in my opinion, best Star Wars movies that they've come out with in the last, 5 years, 6, 7 years. That movie was incredible.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that.
Incredible.
Although The Mandalorian above all. But anyway.
Not a movie, TV show.
I know. But but to go back quickly to the Matrix thing, so the thing I want to point out there is that's very the Matrix sort of universe was for a long time very focused around Neo specifically. The benefit of what this does is allows you to show these things from other perspectives. And so these, as Trish just said, these interstitials that focus on the background people in the protagonist adventure provides enormous richness. And obviously there have been multiple examples of ways that this was done. So I think that's all, I think that's all very reasonable. I guess the question is then that if you do have these things where you do keep them separate in your head, is there what is the tipping point for you where it's gone too far? And by this, I have to be careful about how I ask the question. Gone too far in your ability to manage the games. I'm not really just talking about time and prep. I think I'm talking more about, can you keep your brain space clear enough that you can really give the players and the characters in a given campaign the attention that they deserve, and the story of the campaign the attention it deserves, without forgetting important aspects of things or losing aspects of things because you've got 5 other campaigns that you also have to occupy his brain space to. Like, I do know writers, for example, who can write 4 novels at a time.
Yeah,
I don't know how those unicorns exist though, because I sure as hell can't do that. Like, I can write a novel at a time, and I can maybe write a novel and a short story at a time, but I sure as hell can't write 3 novels, 5 short stories, an essay, and a partridge in a pear tree. Like, I can't. I can't keep occupy my space that way. So I'm wondering for you.
I'll say that I think
works.
the brain space in which I manage my GM side and my player side is different. So I think yes, but I have to look at, so if you don't count what I'm playing in, so that would be the Stitch of Fate podcast, the North by Northwest podcast, VTM over on Roll For It, and Trooper SJP's game right now of our City of Light and Shadow. So that's what I'm playing in. Well, and then of course our bi-monthly here for Strahd, right? So that's 5 things that I'm involved in that don't even count towards my GM energy, because I don't approach characters that I play in games and GMing the same. When I'm
Okay.
GMing, I'm spending my brain energy thinking about the world and the choices, not my choices, the choices that the characters made. So I spend a lot more time pontificating. Uh, Sometimes it's repercussions, sometimes it's consequences, sometimes it's just the effects, the ripple effect of what they've done. So
Right.
that's where my brain space always is. It's like, okay, how is the world shifting? Where when my brain space is on characters, I'm thinking about how that character's developing. Why are they making the choices? How is the world affecting them and the
Okay.
next thing that they're going to do? So like I think my intents are different, or my intent, like the way that I process that information, right, are different,
What about
which
like too many GMs though? Like, I mean,
yeah, and I
GMing
get to that point.
experiences.
That
Okay.
I absolutely get to that point. And usually what it is I can tell because I show up to the game uninspired.
Okay.
Like I'm not inspired, which means my characters aren't inspired. Um I also have absolutely no problem ending a campaign. I love an ending. I love endings. Even if it's not a bow and there may not be a cherry on the ice cream, they may not have solved the problem. They could have killed 1,000 people accidentally, and I still think that's okay. We are so scared of ending a story. I love we have this conversation. I have deja vu. I don't know how many of you out there really like what's that show? The Supernatural. That show
Mm-hmm.
should have ended seasons ago. Now,
Yeah.
I've heard that the new seasons are really, really good, but there was kind of this tipping point for that show where I think they had an opportunity to just let it end in this really high place, and instead we do what a lot of American shows do, which we like more, more,
Yeah.
more, 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 more. And I think we can get that way with our campaigns, right? We want to run these giant D&D campaigns where they take place over 20 years, and if that's what your GM mind can handle, go for it. But that is not what mine can handle.
Right.
I want to be able to tell a story with a nice little ending, and like I actually really liked Supernatural, so like there's nothing against it, but I think is a prime example of what I mean. Is like sometimes quality by ending it early can be better than quantity.
Yes.
Um,
Well, and the same thing could be said for those people who also play a lot of video games about, to me, I would much rather have a tightly focused 25-hour experience than a sprawling 75-hour experience where I just kind of like, oh my God, like 35 hours in. So having a contained arc matters. I will say also, by the way, the sort of 15, 20-year long thing, the problem there is that that's basically just, I mean, that's a soap opera, right? And I think the problem is it's very, very hard to maintain tension in something which feels like a soap opera
yeah,
over the course of time, because either your viewers slash game players slash whatever listeners, either they say, you know what, I'm out. Like at a certain point, you're just like, I can't have you be
yeah.
like, oh wait, this person. Oh, I think comic books sometimes suffer from this too, where there's sometimes a sort of a story, a thread that you just can't keep going forever.
Mm-hmm.
Or you end up with a situation where the whole thing is just kind of this general bubble, and you're like, nothing ever really comes to a head, nothing ever really gets to this sort of position.
This
and i
this
think
position, yeah.
and I think the fear from the part of the writer is that I'm never going to be able to come up with something like this cool again. And the answer to that is you will be able to do so, but you can't do it if you're not ever letting go of the stuff that you did before. And so, and this, by the way, Tyranny of Dragons that I ran on my campaign was a very long, years long campaign, but it did have a definite beginning and an end point. They were going through things and it did come to an end. And, there may or may not be a high level return to that campaign for the
I
last
mean,
wrap up, but that's it. Curse of
yeah,
Strahd is going to come to an end. So these
yeah,
all
it's going to
come to an
come
end.
to an end. Like psychologically speaking, our brains require closure. And closure doesn't mean, like I said, a happy ending. Closure just means we know there is a definitive stopping point. We know that we're working towards the end of something. Why are movies sometimes more exciting than TV shows?
Right.
Because we know that we only have 2.5 hours to tell that Avengers story, or
Right.
to tell Endgame. And that sets the stakes higher. And I'll tell you, I mean, maybe another thing, Arvin, this is something that I've learned about myself over working on a lot of channels in a lot of places. I don't like extended campaigns.
Yeah.
Anything over 12 weeks is too much for me, usually. If I stick with anything over 12 weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm done with that. Sometimes like 16, I can go up to 16, but that's 4 months. Which for me, like I run mini campaigns on my channel, 4 to 5. I believe that you can tell really juicy material in this amount of time, just as much as say you could get it in 16 episodes.
You must have been crawling up the walls with Strahd.
Oh my God, y'all, the Amber Temple, I was like, I'm burning this temple to the ground if it means we're leaving this place. Like that's because I really love and again, like I've played a lot of D&D. I've done a lot of dungeon crawls over the last 12 damn years. But like, so I'm used to that, and I can like set myself in that headspace. But I'll tell you, as a GM, that's not usually what I like to do. Like, I would say that Coriolis is going to Void over on Unmade is going to break my record of a third season. I've never GM'd anything into a third season.
Okay.
The longest I've ever GM'd anything myself was, well, I did 2 volumes on North by Northwest, so we did those. Which were about 10 sessions, like sitting.
And you switch that up, right? With other GMs, like you switch with other people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we rotate. So I did 4 and 5 kind of back to back. That's why I'm backing off and doing one shots for GMing right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I like short campaigns. I like these little bites into worlds. I think sometimes we want to tell the entire world story, and as a GM, we've laid out all of this information and all of this stuff and all of this lore, and we just want everybody to know it.
Yeah.
But is that what the story really is about? Because it's actually not about your lore. It's about these characters in this world. And the lore is there to make that world richer, not for you to give your history book context to them. Like, I genuinely believe that as a GM. So, for example, I mean, even playing Coriolis, you've got a book that is densely packed with lore. I did not ask my players to read that. They didn't come to the table knowing all the ins and outs of that system.
Right.
I did, and understand what was going on, but I only give them the information that's necessary because that keeps them activated and interested and not bogged down in lore that doesn't actually affect their character.
Yep.
And like I said, sometimes it means they don't get all this stuff. I can't tell you the amount of things I have planned that have never been used. I'll tell you, I have one of those. I have an invisible bag full of all the things that Dot's never used at a table. Right? So if that's one of those things that does cross over, sometimes I'll come up with a great idea that can't be used here, but could be used there. Like, even I do that even for my characters sometimes. I'll have I had an idea for my vampire over on Roll For It that I really wanted to happen, and due to unforeseen circumstances and some crazy stuff that went down, that is never going to be a possibility anymore. So she'll never get to do that thing, but it was such a juicy thing, and I loved it so flippin' much. And I was like, I'm hanging on to this. There's gonna be a time to use this. There's gonna be a time to use this. Y'all just wait for my first werewolf character.
You're just waiting for it to be pulled out. Well, see, it's interesting too, because I would say I probably do gravitate myself towards. I like running one shots too, but I like running longer campaigns. I mostly because I love the chemistry that develops over time. I love the sort of intricate backstory and the connections that get made with people, and also bringing back backstory from a long time ago. Callback characters is the best. Like I love doing that. And so I will admit that I myself probably, gravitate a little bit towards the longer campaigns, but I think there's a difference between the longer campaigns and the campaigns that never come to an end. Like Ed Greenwood famously has been playing.
You're a novel writer, aren't you, Arv?
Yeah, well,
you write novels.
Yes, but my novels are not. But my novels tend to be somewhat on the shorter side for novels.
Okay.
I mean, I'm writing between 80 and 110,000 words, which for a fantasy writer is low level. I'll tell you.
The way you develop story is for a novel is a little, I guess, episodic. That's like, it's not so episodic. It's more of this kind of bigger arc.
Yeah.
Where I develop things in episodes.
Yeah.
The way you might watch like a very short movie or a short
for
film.
sure. And it's definitely not a value judgment one or the other. It's just definitely like, different sort of levels of interest, I think. But what I will say is that what I've learned from the process of writing short stories and what I've learned from the process of watching the smaller campaigns is the way to make those little, mini arcs within a larger campaign have some kind of functionality. And so I like those little moments. And I guess actually, especially when you're running a long campaign, it helps to have different campaigns that you're running to kind of give you even more of that variety, because you're going to be with it for a while. And difference between GMing it and playing it too, probably, and how that sort of thing kind of lasts. So, okay, so I've
got one thing in chat
Sure.
that I don't want to leave yet, because I want to address this.
Yes.
You don't enjoy depressing stories. You got enough of that on the news. I hope you don't think I run depressing stories. In fact, most of my stories are rather heartfelt, and unless I'm a player, like I play in some depressing stories. The stories that I tell usually are not depressing. It's not about death or losing people. It's about how we make our world better or help change it and support people. So like even you'll notice anything I run on my channel, like I'm not running Aliens on my channel. I'm running it on somebody else's channel, because the stories I tell on my channel come from a much deeper place. So I hesitate to call them depressing. They are drama. I do comedy stuff for like one shots, and like I played a lot of comedy stuff, but like I really love telling dramatic stories because I believe we as humans can connect deeply with that. I think God, I never know what I've said on this show, Arv. I always feel like I repeat myself.
I don't think you
If I
have
ever
so
repeat
far.
myself, Arv be like, Dot, your grandma is showing. Reel it in.
It's like when I used to subscribe to the Your Dog magazine for when my dog was alive, and like every 2 years I was like, I feel like I've read this article before.
One more time. So so if you've only seen the vampire stuff, then yes, that stuff is very dark. It is very dense, and it's about somebody losing their humanity. So you could find that depressing. I'll give you that. But yeah. Poke me when you do Lone Wolf. Let me know if I just start rambling and repeating myself like an old woman. But yeah, so I just think there's some really interesting things, and I'll say this too, not to be said that your lore as a GM is not important. It's super duper important for you to have your lore.
Yeah.
But I think as a GM, one of the things that I've learned that has made me a better GM is learning to let go of my ego around the lore that I've built.
Oh yeah.
And let my players find it.
Absolutely.
Let them find it and stop trying to feed it to everyone.
Yep.
There's a difference. My drama teacher said, act better. There's a difference between showing us and telling us. Don't tell us. Let your players show us the lore. That's your player's job.
Right. Lore as energized and as brought
and
to life by the players who were engaged with it. Yes. 100% true. And I think, when I look at things that have like a lot of content, and I see sometimes people discussing this on Reddit, good example of this is the Storm King's Thunder campaign, where you have one of multiple giant lords that the players can deal with depending on how various things happen. And so there's been some complaints on Reddit about how one of the problems with that is it's like, well, you've got all this content in the book and there's only one giant lord, so why can't they see a bunch of other giant lords? And the answer to that is like, well, they can afterwards if you want. But then the second part of it is like, you don't have to see every part of the, like, you don't have to be completionist every TTRPG. You don't have to see every giant lord. And if you as the DM are like, I've got to make sure that they see every conceivable aspect of this world, then, what you're doing is creating something where it feels like you're making them go through this encyclopedia or this gazetteer of the world, as opposed to actually seeing the part that matters to them for their story. And that may be something small and just one, small little portion, as opposed to this world spanning, we get to see everything and do everything and be everything like that. I don't know. I mean, these smaller stories, I think, are, equally interesting. There are things right now in Barovia and in Strahd that you folks are not going to encounter ever. And that's fine, because you don't need to encounter absolutely everything. And that means that your experience of the world will be different than someone else's story and world, which is also fine. So yeah, that there has to be, I think, more honor given to the players, the individual players' experience of the world around them, not just, I'm going to bludgeon you with the world and how much of it there is, and all that kind of thing. So you talked about that tipping point. Have you ever had a situation where a player, in your view, has been maybe, I don't want to say disconnected, but their head is in 5 different places at once? And I guess we'll keep it to like game space here, where it seems like they're just really getting a lot. Maybe, for example, I GM for a couple of players in several different campaigns, and I always feel like those players, Tren as an example, Tren brings it, whether he's playing in Adventures in Middle Earth or whether he's playing in Infinity and Beyond Curse of Strahd. But I'm wondering if you've had players in the past that it feels to you are kind of, their headspace is having trouble focusing on one thing when they're playing that one thing at a time. Have you had that, or would you know what to look for when that was happening?
I would just say you as a GM will know when your players aren't buying in. I know when they're not buying in. I can feel it. Even in a digital sphere, I can tell. Because they're not making choices that have repercussions, which means my stakes aren't high enough and neither are theirs. So it's time for me to up the ante. Which is one thing. Like, one of my jobs as the GM is to make my players care. That's where that lore comes in. That's where that world building comes in. If I've built a world that is so rich and I need to give them all this lore, I need to do it in a way that sets stakes for them.
Yeah.
Right? Such as having to distract Strahd, long enough to let us go in and scour the entire place to find a single skull in a massive building.
Yep.
That's stakes, and it allows us to make interesting choices because of it, such as floating up to the top, trying to come in a chimney. That didn't work, right? We're here on an invitation. You can't mess with me. Like, those kinds of things make for better choices than not, I
Right.
guess. But that's because you set the stakes high, and you, as for us as a DM, and said, oh well, sure, Strahd will leave his castle for a little bit, sure, I'll let that happen, so that we could get those stakes high, right? And that's, I don't know, I think that's
Right. How long Strahd stays out of the castle is another
castle
matter.
is a totally other
Yeah,
matter.
and which is, which is something that you all anticipated may be an issue, but not sure. Yes, that's true. And I think and this is something which I think is extremely important. The idea of a living world only really functions when you believe that the world is working when the players aren't looking at it.
Yep.
This goes back to that point about Neo and the Matrix again. If you're watching Neo's story, you want to believe that the Matrix is happening all around Neo,
Yep.
and for every millions of people that exist in the Matrix that are not Neo. If you ever get the feeling that it's all just about that person and that the minute it looks away, the thing just goes dead, that can be really problematic. And so having the sense of the movement of time, having the sense of people moving forward, having the sense that, okay, now things are happening and they
People
weren't,
change.
yes, regardless of what the players do, that really is powerful, I think, in kind of moving
Like,
things
I'm
forward.
scared to go back to Kresk. 'Cause, like, I am.
Yeah,
I think about it,
yeah,
like, what is the,
yeah.
what, we know that nothing good is going to happen there. So, like, even just the idea that things have been going on while we're over here stealing skulls out of castles is terrifying.
Yep.
And it adds such a level of stakes to the world. I think it's why I'm so interested in the Aliens franchise.
Yeah.
And why it's so interesting, because we know, as audience viewers out there, that world, it feels personal, and we know that Wayland Yutani is out there trying real hella hard to collect themselves a sticky little egg sac so that they can bring it back into humanity and study it. Like, one, the hubris alone is humorous, but
Yes.
that world feels like we are always, like, they are out there hunting us, that they will find us, that our existence is, no matter how far to the edges of space we run, inevitable. It is inevitable.
So,
And yeah.
I want to follow up with you on that, because this is a good example, and it was the other thing that I wanted to talk about relating
Yeah.
to this overall topic. Because Aliens has a very distinctive thing that people identify with. I was thinking about this with Dune. Dune, people identify with Paul Atreides, the Fremen, what's his name? Whatever the guy who trains him. He's
Huey.
played by
Huey and
the guy who's played by Patrick
Yes.
Stewart in the movie.
yes,
Anyway,
yes.
I can't remember his name. But anyway, so we're sort of aware of those characters, and in the case of Aliens, obviously we think of characters like Bishop and so on. But I mean, the one that we really think about is Ripley, obviously. So what I'm curious about is when you're working on a campaign like that, and you're dealing with an established a franchise which establishes so much attention to Ripley and Sigourney Weaver's playing of her and all that sort of thing. I agree with you that the world feels it's very powerful within it, but it's
Like
so
moving.
yes, but that's true. But it seems so focused around the experience of the people on the ship initially, and then the experience of Ripley dealing with these creatures, that I'm wondering how you do that. And I'll add one little other wrinkle into this, because I feel like one of the problems that people had with Prometheus was that it didn't was this sense that it was going into play. Like, we didn't care about that as much, right? Like, we cared more about the experience of Ripley fighting against the aliens and the creatures there than just the world in general. I know there were many problems with Prometheus, but I'm just saying. So what I'm curious
I
about
liked
is
Prometheus, so we can have that.
okay. Listen, I'm not an aliens expert at all. I've only seen the first movie, and
I loved the.
Yeah,
I liked, as long as we don't include the fourth film, I think they're all brilliant.
okay.
And I'll tell, for each of their individual, 3 had its own problems, but I think that was for its time. It had some very misogynistic overtones. But thank you. Yes, Gurney.
Gurney, yeah. Gurney Halleck, I think, is what I was thinking about.
I
Anyway,
think
yeah.
what Prometheus. So if you look at each of the aliens, so basically, if we look at what I call the Ripley trilogy, which is just the 3 movies: Alien, Aliens, and Aliens 3.
Mhm.
right? Those three films are about Ripley. It is about her story.
Okay.
It is. It's Ripley's story, right? We definitely know the first film is, but Aliens even Aliens the second film has a definitive moment where it becomes a Ripley's story again. Because at first you're like, oh, this isn't about Ripley. This is about her joining another team. It's about these commandos and da 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 da. It's not.
Mhm.
And the moment you know it is when those commandos are led into the middle of that nest and they can't use their ammo, and she's shaking him and she's going, "Get them out of there! Get them out!" And he's not doing anything because he's shell shocked. And she takes the headset from him and puts it on. It becomes Ripley's movie again. And you realize by the third film that all of these have been about Ripley. But the franchise is not about Ripley. The Aliens franchise, like the story that's being told, is
Okay.
not about Ripley,
Okay.
right? Because then that also includes the video game. So if you think about Alien Isolation, which is about Ripley's daughter,
Mhm.
okay, and then you've got Prometheus, which is about God and makers. That
Mhm.
movie is about our making, and it's about one creation looking into the face of its own maker and recognizing its faults and using the I don't know, the powers of scientific technology of the humans makers to wipe us out.
Mhm.
It is a story of hubris, and you need Prometheus and you need Covenant to be able to tell the full story.
Mhm.
Which I'm obsessed with. Like, I'm totally obsessed with this idea of like the engineers created humans, saw us as flawed, so they created a biological weapon that the thing we created, basically an android, right? Synthetic life, turned into a biological, organic weapon that now hunts us. That we think we can kind of control and do exactly what the engineers did. It is a giant circle.
Mhm.
And it is, I think it is the perfect nightmare. It is the perfect nightmare of what it means to be lost to your humanity. And I love Aliens for that. Because that movie, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to pull this up. I got it right here. I'm going to pull it up on my drive. Every game that I GM, I write a note to my players, a GM note. It's like a director's note in a playbill.
Okay.
I always write one. And my one for my Aliens campaign that's coming up, I wrote to them. And there is, because I'm not going to be able to say it as well as I wrote it.
Okay.
So I'm going to read my actual words off the page because I feel like I'll do better. Okay. Yes. Okay. Both the hubris and the horror that permeates from the movie speaks to me. It's a palpable fear that starts in your gut and it makes your chest pound. I love it. It's so honest and relatable. When you watch the movies, you're constantly asking yourself, what would I do in that situation? Or you're yelling at the screen, no, you idiot, not that. Like, don't do that,
Mhm.
right? There's something about this world that feels so close to home. And so my goal with this campaign is to still make it feel like that. Because the reason we root for Ripley is because we see ourselves in Ripley. She's just normal. She's just a chick that's trying to get home to
Mhm.
her daughter that we don't ever even hear about.
Right.
It is such a sorry, I get really obsessed. I love this world. I love it. And I think that it is a constant look and view at how we have lost our humanity. We're lost to corporations. We're lost to the darkness of space. We're lost to what it even means to be human anymore, this deep out. And no matter how many corners of space we run to, we're still lost. So when I say, how do you play in a world like that? You have to recognize that my game is only bumping up next to one film. The way that I'm like setting up the
Right,
Aliens
right,
campaign.
right.
So I got six games. I'm asking each player to build two characters. One of them following the Aliens like template. They're all part of different teams. The first team is an engineering and science team that is running a large-scale mining operation at the bottom of a frozen ocean on an ice planet.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Underwater, all the perfect setup for the most horrible space. Everything. There's a reactor, there's all kinds of stuff, right? So that's the first team. The second team is a group of space truckers, just like the first Aliens film, right? Like, so that's my inspiration. They're a group of space truckers. So how I'm choosing to tell the story, because I've got 6 episodes, and let's be real, the moment you meet the alien, you're all dead. Like, that's the point of the game. It's like, you're not supposed to introduce the alien until the end, just like the movies, because if you introduce it too early, then you've got no story, right? Most of the time, the aliens in films are set up where you have to deal with basic space stuff. airlock breaking, ship exploding, debris in space knocks your stuff off course. Like, you have to deal with basic space stuff first. So
Right.
that's how you start with a campaign. You don't introduce an alien right away at all. You just don't. It's about this team's whatever. So I guess 6 episodes. So here's what I'm doing. First 2 episodes are looking at this engineering team. There are going to be spoilers for this because I have to give some spoilers for this to make sense.
Okay.
So anybody that's going to watch it, sorry, there's going to be some spoilers. The first 2 episodes are going to be about this engineering team, and the mining rig that they're managing cracks through something and hits something, like lodged deep here under the ice, under this frozen ocean. And when they go down to check it out, they find a ship that has frozen solid. There are people in like cryo sleep, and the ship is under ice. The middle 2 episodes, 3 and 4, are going to be the space truckers, and we're actually going back in time because the ship that they find under ice is the space truckers. So we're going to go back and see how the space truckers crash landed on this planet 10 years earlier.
Oh, okay.
Right? So we get the 2. Then we're getting this flashback. We're going to go see the truckers pick up valuable equipment for Weyland-Yutani from a prison planet that is now shut down, which is the same prison planet from the 3rd film, basically, right? They shut it all down, so they're going to go pick it up, which are freaking alien eggs. They don't know they're eggs, but that's what they are. They're egg sacs. So they're going to pick them up and be transporting them, and something's going to go wrong, which is what makes them crash land on this ice planet and get basically frozen, cryogenically frozen. Now, for those of you that know anything about aliens, the egg sacs can't hatch in cold, under cold. They need warm spaces to actually be able to like completely do what they do. So everything's just like and then this mining team's going to crack it open. So the final 2 episodes is where the aliens will actually appear. And if one of the engineering team dies, they immediately unthaw one of the space trucker team that is going to be infected. Is kind of the idea, right? So like they're gonna thaw this out. One of the egg sacs is gonna hatch somebody. Somebody from the science and engineering team is gonna die. They always die first, except for the medics. They actually die first. And then you've got this situation where you've got this engineering team that doesn't know anything about it. They're trying to thaw out these people that they found in extended cryo sleep, and this equipment from Weyland-Yutani, and it just so happens to be an alien, and they release it accidentally. And then as they die, the space truckers thaw out and wake up and find themselves underwater on a planet, right? So every step of the way you're upping the stakes, and I'm trying to tell the story in kind of a backwards way. So
you need to have a set of players that is experienced enough and willing enough to kind of go with the fact that, because like when in this sort of premise do the players expect or discover that these are their other characters? Like, I assume it's not initially, right? I assume like, because at the point that they discover it, then at some point they're like, okay, well, I'm going to find them in cryosleep. Like, are there things that they would do that they might try to do to avoid cryosleep, which is just not going to ultimately work? Because you mean the truckers? Yeah, because there's an end. Well, they're jumping to move it, which means they have to go into cryosleep to go into faster than light travel. Okay. That's how it works, right? Okay. So it'll be, again, it's like, I draw a lot of inspiration from the other movies. In the 2nd film, when they find Ripley, the 3rd one, when she crash lands on the prison planet, in the 3rd film when she crash lands, it's because there was an alien inside of the vessel, and they waited. The facehugger waited for them all to go to sleep, and then it infected Ripley, and crashed the vessel, and killed everybody else on board. And so I think it's going to be one of those type situations. Right? Actually, I think what I'm probably going to do is they won't play the actual pilot of the vessel. Nobody will play the pilot. It'll be an NPC type character, or like the leader of the mission, which is always the last person in cryosleep. Mm-hmm. Right? And they could also be the one. So, they're going to set autopilot, and it's the last person out, and the facehugger jumps up, infects them. They crash land the ship because facehugger on face. And everybody else is in cryosleep, the rest of the trucker team. So I think as a GM, you have to, like, I'm just thinking of scenarios, right? I'm like, well, it could go this way. It could go this way. They could crack an egg open early. I'm making a corruption bar for people to donate, and then the audience gets to choose which person's infected, and none of my cast gets to know. Oh, wow. So just like the cast, they get to find out who's been infected when it bursts from somebody's chest.
So I can't plan for everything, but in my mind right now, this is how the 6 episodes clink up next to each other.
Okay.
In the actual timeline, the truckers go to pick this stuff up at the end of the 3rd film. It doesn't go well for them. Surprise, freaking surprise. They crash land on an ice planet and go under. 10 years later, Weyland-Yutani's built this mining facility that's just pulling this nuclear, this radioactive material from the center of this ice planet, and they accidentally come across a vessel that has been long lost, that everybody's kind of forgotten about, that's disappeared off a radar, and then they thaw it out, and now it's just survival. Who makes it to the surface?
Wow. So in a way, it is see, what I think is interesting here is that what it feels like to me you're doing is focusing on the thematic aspects of aliens, the thematic aspects of isolation, of uncertainty, of xenophobia, somewhat, of all of these things. And as a consequence of that, that is the thing that almost pulls together the world more than any specific element or character.
They actually write that in the book. They flat out tell you that at the very top of the book, which is beautiful, by the way. Look at this. Okay, I'm going to show you guys something that really blew my mind. So this is the timeline. The official franchise timeline does not include the 4th film. Let's see. This is Prometheus doesn't start till right here-ish.
Okay.
Which means there is human timeline that we don't get in the films.
Okay.
Of when we left space first. So who says that your game can actually take place in here when Prometheus is first just starting and you have early alien life forms? You know what I mean? Which is really, really cool. But they talk about the themes of this game and what it means to do a slow build towards the alien, because that's the moment you reveal the monster, it's not scary anymore. Right? So if what you're playing is a horror RPG, you have to keep those stakes high, and the moment you reveal the monster, that's not the case. And I'll go ahead and tell you, these aliens, they'll kill it's just like Alien Isolation. Your job is to run and hide, not to fight. Yeah.
So it's interesting because that really does sort of tie that together. So I guess this is one of the things I think we can think about for folks watching, is that one of the ways that you keep these things separate in your head, one of the ways that you can keep kind of interest moving forward into these campaigns is to be, which is not different actually very much from writing too, is being very clear about the thematic question of what you're dealing with, what themes are being approached in each of these cases. So, for example, as, Curse of Strahd has progressed, one of the things that has come up is the question of individual versus group goals. How many things are individuals willing to sacrifice to allow the group to succeed? How many things will they put on the back burner? How many things will they put to the side? What stuff will they do for each other or not do for each other because they have their own individual questions? And of course, the ultimate individualist in this game is Strahd himself, and everything redounds to him. Everything comes down to his own warped vision of the fact that he is the put upon one, he is the victim, he is the one, etc. And so everything is about Strahd, and Strahd does everything he can to make them too all individuals who will tear themselves apart. And that question of constantly dealing with the individual versus the group tension is a major aspect of this. That's something along those lines. In the case of Espergenesis, one of the big aspects of that has been about identity. It's about finding out who you are. It's about discovering, what things are going to define you in this universe. And having discovered that identity, are you okay with what you found yourself to be? Do you want to be something different than what you are? Do you want to change, manipulate, mold in some way the way you are? And that's really what Espergenesis is about. And so each of these things, ultimately, each of these campaigns have different sort of thematic structures. And I think anyone here who plays in a game themselves, Trisha Metz and Shadowed and the whole crew, and Echo and Rock God that plays, and Hoodie that play the community D&D every twice a week twice a month, on this channel, that has its own feel in terms of what they value. Emberwind very much has that also. So every campaign, and certainly Adventures of Middle-earth does, so every campaign has its own kind of thematic ideas, and that's one way to keep, if you're running multiple campaigns or playing or GMing in multiple campaigns, one of the ways to keep it straight is, what are the themes in each world that hold things together.
Yeah.
And that theme is going to be different from a, Neon Genesis Evangelion type game, as opposed to something like Aliens, as opposed to a Star Wars based one, as opposed to an epic fantasy one, and so on.
And choose and really choose different themes. Like that's, you asked earlier, like, how do you keep them separate? And I think as a GM,
Right.
you want to keep your campaigns distinctive. I run a lot of sci-fi. The last thing I need is all my sci-fi stuff blending together, because the fact of the matter is they're all taking place in very different worlds.
Right.
So the themes that I'm exploring in Coriolis are not the same themes of say, hubris that I'm going to dive into in Aliens, right? They're different, and this is one of the reasons why I write a GM note. That's like me talking to my players. Like, this is what I want this campaign to be. This is why I'm inspired to do this campaign. I talk about how many times it took me just to watch the first Aliens film to get past the dinner scene. Right? And then when I finally did, I fell in love with it. Yeah, but it's so terrifying. It's terrifying. Like, it's all the body dysmorphia things that I just don't need.
Yeah.
Don't need things popping out of my chest, right? So but I think you're right. Like, it's pick your themes for your campaigns. If you're going to run a bunch of them, make them distinctive. The themes that you explore in one should not be the same things. I say should not. It will help you if they're not the same themes in the next game. That they're different and unique. Obviously the themes in my Overlight campaign are going to be hella different than my Coriolis campaign, or hella different than my Kids on Bikes campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I was thinking about that. Kids on Bikes or Tales in the Loop stuff, which is
like, those are very different themes of innocence and loss of innocence. And we're not talking like adults losing humanity. We're talking about like the way vampires do. We're talking about kids learning what it means to grow up.
Yes,
and that's face things that are outside of themselves on a bigger scale.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to kind of come to just highlight that for just a second, and then we'll kind of move into the next stage here, because I don't want to take too long.
I was about to say, get your questions ready.
Because get your questions ready, folks. But I do want to say that this for me is the difference between focusing a campaign around something like Stranger Things and focusing a campaign around something like Tales from the Loop. And the reason is that Stranger Things has its own kind of emphasis and feel, but Tales from the Loop is not principally about the weirdness. Tales from the Loop really is about the way that people react to living amidst weirdness.
Yes.
And that's, again, why I think it captured the 80s so well, and I've said this multiple times, that it really captures the strangeness of living in a world where you were, again, on the hair trigger of Armageddon every second. And no one talked about it at the time, but you felt it palpably after the fact. Like, holy crap, I can't believe we've survived this. And that's why so many things from that period seem so strange. So again, it's about growing up and living in a world where you have latchkey kids who come home by themselves, who navigate this world largely alone, and where parents are kind of a distant entity to a degree, and where, again, you're dealing with this sort of manifest strangeness about a world where we all kind of agree that it's okay to live where we could all just kill each other tomorrow. That there's just something so strange about doing that. And I don't think it became clear to any of us until after we were past the worst of it, when we were like, holy crap, what did we just do? Just then. So Tales from the Loop really picks up on that idea. It's not about the bizarreness of the world that gets described. It's about the way that people react to that bizarreness. So, and that gives it a different feel from Stranger Things or from Twin Peaks or to these other things, which it's often been compared to. Those things have, I would say, elements that resonate, but the difference there is the theme. And so really sitting down, and I love this GM note idea also, Dot, because it's not just what you give to your players, it's also you for yourself, right? Realizing this is what as I'm writing it, this is why I care about this. Like, this is why I want to do it. I am interested in exploring this particular thing. And so having as a GM this idea of what is thematically important about a campaign to you, and I've just described my different campaigns and what I find thematically important for them. You need as a GM to be able to do that in your own campaigns if you're doing them more than just like a one-shot, because that will make such a big difference in terms of how the flavor of the campaign comes across. I think Rising Tides would have plenty to say about the nature of what Brandon is thinking about for Soundclash Clampdown, and why those players have value there, what the themes of fighting against oppression, of dealing, that thing is extremely important to know why you care about it. So understanding themes may be a way to really kind of summarize a lot of what we've talked about, I think, in terms of running multiple campaigns and understanding what they are ultimately. So Okay, so really, as always, really interesting conversation. So let's talk briefly about, and I think I know what Dot's going to talk about probably, but is there a supplement or a campaign book or a something related to the tabletop space that you wanted to bring up that you've recently gotten that you're like, hey, you should check this out? Like, I don't know whether, or that maybe you got a while ago, but you've only now gotten around to just really diving into. I don't know if it is Alien or something else,
say, I
but
can't. I'm so sorry, y'all. I can't talk to you about Dune yet. I'm under an NDA.
just be aware that that would be the case.
Yeah, soon. As soon as it's out and I got my hands on it, I'll tell you all about it. Yeah, I would have to say Aliens is probably the newest one that I've gotten my hands on.
I was wondering if it might be that.
I mean, I've been playing a lot of VTM because, I launched that new podcast or whatever, and I'm going to be launching another I'm going to be launching another Overlight campaign as part of the grant that I received. So that's going to be coming up along with some Swords Fall. If you haven't checked out Swords Fall, for those of you that really like Afropunk, it's a very cool game, and it's made by a friend. So I encourage you to check it out. We'll talk about that. Don't fret. I've already put that bug in Arv's ear. Chat. Yeah. So I haven't really announced it yet. Yeah, we're working on that. I haven't really announced it yet, but that's going to be coming. I'm also excited about 2 more games. I'm going to be playtesting Nerdburger Craig's new fantasy game called Good Strong Hands, which is...
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, Kickstarter launches Tuesday, so Monday night we'll be playtesting it on my channel. It's kind of a whimsical fantasy game. It reminds me a little bit of like Neverending Story meets like Dark Crystal. There's kind of this like dark essence in the world that feeds off people with light, like that have the kind of so it's very whimsical. People play like fauns and fairies and very, very whimsical little creatures. So that should be a lot of fun. And then in for that series, same series under the podcast, the novella series, we're going to be playing Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which I am very excited about.
I remember you mentioning that name, and I had the same reaction.
A whole table full of that. So that's a new Evil Hat product that's coming out. So I'll be playing Thirsty Sword Lesbians on the channel, which should be a lot of fun too. And definitely for those of you that look for lighter games, you're gonna see a lot more of those on the Monday night series.
Wait a minute, that's got a deep root of seriousness. Yes, we call that TSL.
Was it the thirsty or the sword part? Because yes, Thirsty Sword Lesbians does look really, really rad, and I'm very excited to have. I'm gonna be having the game developer, like the designer, April. She's gonna be on board, and then I've got to have a whole table of ladies that I'll be running through a little session of that. So that's kind of fun. But obviously, my big right now. Development, the thing I'm working most on is this Aliens campaign, because I really want it to be I want it to feel like Ridley Scott's world, and I want my players to feel like they are having to survive the world of Ridley Scott. So I'm pretty stoked to see what that I don't know where all that goes. So I've been doing that. I've been reading a lot of that. Yes. It is a great name. You guys should check that out. Thirsty Sword Lesbians, I believe, is available. If they're not crowdfunding now, they will be crowdfunding Thirsty Sword Lesbians in October, because I know for a fact that's one of the reasons I think why we're playing it. So should be fun.
So I will quickly mention the one that I'm glad my last pass is again not working. So irritating. So it's okay though. It's fine. I figured it out, Jeff. So I just backed, actually on Kickstarter, a new solo adventure that I liked, and I've often, when I was growing up, I did a lot of the solo stuff, and enjoyed doing this both as like solo or as sometimes as a duet, one GM or one player. So there is a game called, a Kickstarter project called, and I will put the link up here if I can.
Thank you for that link to Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Okay, I think this should work. And it is called Into the Unknown. It is this solo adventure, which is basically, the thing that got me was that it was a high fantasy sandbox campaign for a single player. And so the description of how this whole thing kind of came together is you basically leave this area, and it's from multiple systems. So 5e for swords and wizardry, and then for BX, which is kind of a kind of a reskin rework of 5e. And so you can run it either yourself or you can run it with both a GM and one player. You play your character, the monsters or encounters, which they explore. But the other thing that's cool about it is the fact that you do all those things, you find all those things, and depending on when you reach different sections, the circumstances in which you find them changes the experience. So it's not just, I deal with this thing and then I go off and I deal with this thing, and it doesn't really make any difference what order I do them in, because if you've done the first thing, it's going to affect the way that the second thing appears, the third, the fourth, the fifth, or whatever the case may be. And so I like that. Oh, is it really? Let me do
New
it.
link. It works.
Let me do it this way.
I was about to say they dropped.
Oh,
a new
thank you,
link in
Shadow.
chat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's cool.
Yes, that I really, something about it really, I liked the idea and the feel of it. And I think as I was looking through this, the fact that you could explore different aspects of it, and that it would have an impact on how every other aspect was going to be played out, I thought was pretty neat. And I immediately started thinking about whether it's the kind of thing that I could even do with chat on stream, because I often think a little bit about whether chat would be interested in either watching me play through it or me as a GM playing with one other player, which this obviously accommodates well, or whether chat itself could be the player and do something kind of a variant on what we do with the gamebook streams on this channel and stuff like that. But I just thought it was really neat. I thought the art was cool too, and I was interested in the way that it all kind of plays out. So this just funded actually on my birthday a couple days ago. 1,303 backers pledged, 36,840 out of what I think originally was like an $8,000 goal. So this way
Wow.
overfunded, which is great. And it's going to be coming out sometime in May 2021. And at some point when I get a free second, I may reach out to them and be like, hey, is this the kind of thing that you might be interested in seeing featured on the channel? And if so, what can we work out in terms of sponsorship or whatever else, down the line? So we'll see. I mean, I just have been thinking about that. I didn't do that for that reason. I just thought it was cool. And I was thinking about something that'd be fun to play regardless
Very cool,
for
yeah.
myself. But if it gets brought into the channel, then maybe all of
That's
you
cool.
will see something about that. So I wanted to mention that because I like good solo/duo stuff. And I thought that'd
Yeah.
be,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
a big.
there's not a lot of
fan
it as much as there should be, and
Yeah,
so.
I'm a big. Just as a GM, that's a mechanism I use all the time. One-on-one time with like a single player.
Yeah, I like exactly same. I love the
Even if
one-on-one
it's a
stuff.
flashback or just a small moment, even in a campaign with everybody else, I think it can really add so much to character development to let somebody just have a moment to their own.
Yep. And something that can then be a callback for them and you later on in the sort of larger campaign. All right, chat. So now we will take questions. If you have questions thrown. No, not a nude solo adventure, Dragon. What on? I think your hearing is going out. Really, I think it's becoming intensely selective. But now you can throw questions at us, chat, if you have any about anything we've talked about this evening, or about other game mastering, dungeon mastering questions that you might have. Now is the time to ask them. If you don't mind, a question in all caps, followed by colon, and then the actual question will allow us to sort through these quickly. If you've got questions for us, now is the time to let us know what they are. We're going to take about 5-10 minutes to do those, and then I will let Dot go, and I will move on to, we'll close up shop on the show.
Give them questions.
So questions, do you have
Not
any?
like I won't be back next month, but
Say what? So what was that?
I said get those questions together, and don't forget I'll be back next month.
That's right.
So you
That's
can-
right. That is the case. You have hyped Lone Wolf up for Aliens. Well, yeah, it's a great. I mean,
Well, you best get hyped. I'm so excited. I even made I made an Aliens trailer. You know how all the Aliens movies open.
I
up
love
with,
that
like, a
trailer.
pan
You did a
across
good job with
space,
it.
And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make one of those. I was very proud of myself.
Yep, you did a good job with that trailer.
Now I
like that,
gotta
so.
get the rest of it made with the rest of the cast announcement, which, by the way, if you guys weren't here the other night for our vocalist, Zach from our vocalist will be joining that cast along with the Bubbernaut and Unmade Gaming and the Metamancer. So some really top tier gamers coming to the table to hopefully.
I don't know that Zach really
'em.
knows anything
Wreck
about
'em.
space characters. Honestly, I'm not sure that. No, Zach is great and is going to be great at it. And yeah, I agree with you. That's a good. In fact, it's been a while since I've seen Metamancer in a campaign, just because I just haven't been following different things that she's in.
Yeah,
but,
she plays over right now. She's in Unmade Gaming's on Unmade Gaming channel. She's in I think it's their City of Mist campaign.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I lie. It is Grimjack's Atari Twilight campaign.
Oh, Grimjack. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
Grimjack's campaign that she's playing in. I'm sorry, I got that backwards.
All right, let's see. Question: Why are you slumming it with Arv's campaign? Wow, Dragon. Wow.
Listen, dragon.
Listen, all right.
I'm not slumming it. What Arv doesn't know is I came to the table because I was like, let me sparkle as a, a basically a drow version. I was like, I'm gonna play the darkest, scariest lady that I can think of, who's really not dark and scary. She's just what is she? She's like
Well,
Morticia.
she looks like a corpse, so there's that.
She's like Morticia. She's just a little affected.
Right. She's like Morticia. Yes.
She's like a little Morticia. She's a caring mother who loves her little baby scorpion.
She's eccentric. Yes, no. She's clearly, definitely eccentric. That's
eccentric, yes. But that's why, because I love Arv. And he was like, we need a person. And I was like, well, I've never actually played a Strahd game. This ought to be fun. And then when I pitched the idea of a female Dusk Elf, he didn't say no.
No, I liked the idea a lot. And it actually worked out super well. I like really good players. They really tend to play well. So
yeah, I'm sparkling with Agatha's personality. That's why I came to this campaign.
I just kept thinking about you as basically any role played by Helena Bonham Carter in the last 15 years. Like it's just sort of like
she's basically yes. Yes.
So I mean, I was digging that. Other questions about gaming, game mastering, dungeon mastering, or anything like that. Agatha reminds you of both your aunt and your grandmother at once.
Yes.
Really?
She's just, I wanted her to be, if all y'all don't know, if Dot's got to play D&D, she's playing a druid. Unless there's already a druid at the table. Like, I love druids. And so, I didn't want to play a very atypical druid, and it was actually Arv that was like, we really need a healer. And I was like, well, what if I play this woman who's been this Dusk Elf who's hidden in the woods near this town, and she just shows up in the middle of the night and she heals kids in their sleep.
Yeah.
And they think she's like the scary lady in the corner of the room. Like, they're terrified of her because of her presence, but she's actually a healer. And we were both kind of like, yes. Creepy lady's not actually creepy.
It was so perfect for it was perfect as well for a Ravenloft campaign, because it was just like in this world everything's warped, so even your healing is creepy. You know what I mean? Like it was
me
so...
in the corner with my umbrella and my veil and my pale ass face. Now I look
here.
Like
let me
corpse,
help
so
you.
it's like here, shh, stay quiet while I heal you, kid. Like.
The bedside manner of just freaky.
Yeah, the bedside manner of Agatha. I
but
can only imagine.
I also like the fact that it creates, because I think, again, you fit in beautifully, I think, with the other characters, but it also, there is, again, the manifest weirdness, sort of gothic strangeness of just like, and here's this person with a Victorian outfit and, with the umbrella and the lace and everything. And everyone's just like, okay, because all of them are like, two split personalities, possessed by demons, vampire spawns. Like, they're all these, like, they've got their own problems, right? And they've got all their own issues. So you fit very well into this oddly dysfunctional yet still somewhat functional family. So it was great to see that. Let's see. I've got two questions here. First of all, what are your favorite classes or professions to play? I love Rangers. I've always loved Rangers. I don't care if they're powerful or not, or, whatever, underpowered, overpowered.
Druids.
Because Aragorn is my favorite character from Lord of the Rings. I am very drawn to the nature of what a Ranger is. And so I've always loved Rangers. I also like monks, because monks allow me to get out of the thing which I like least, which is dealing with, as a player, which is dealing with gear. Like, I don't care about finding awesome weapons. I don't care. I really don't care. I just want to play my guy, and the more that I can play my guy and like RP and do all this cool stuff, and I like combat too, but being able to have the combat where I'm not having to worry about, well, are you proficient in the following? I'm like, I'm proficient in my fists, yo. So that's my proficiency. So I like monks, and then sorcerers, because I do like magic sometimes. So that's me. That's my answer to that question. What are you said druid. Do you have any other?
Yeah, it's always druid. I love all the many forms of the druid lifestyle. I am okay, I'm going to try to put this a little bit more vague. I'm a fan of characters that use I don't usually go combat. But I like characters that are I call them tool characters. They're the characters that have all the little things that you don't know you need until you need them. Like, I love druids because their spells are purposeful. They're not giant. Like, I don't get to shoot magic missiles and stuff. I don't get to kill things. But, like, you need a gallon of water? Got you.
Yeah.
Right? Or you need, like, something small and insignificant, or you need a whisper on the wind. Like, I really love these characters that bring tiny things that can really add to story.
Yes.
And it's not just combat.
Yes.
And so I like to think that a lot of my characters are that way. Like, that's how I built Agatha. I mean, Agatha couldn't hold a door closed if she needed to, but like she has a lot of interesting, obscure things that she brings to the table, like odds and ends and turning into gas and those kind of thing. Agatha Gassy. So I really, really love that. Those kinds of characters. I find that a lot of medic characters that play a lot of those characters, or characters that are like not healers but highly intelligent. Um, I'm playing a Torg game coming up with WebDM. I'm going to be joining them for a short little nice Torg campaign, and I'm playing. It's like all about 80s action heroes, or like these 80s stereotype from movies, and so I'm doing your like Radio Shack loving, joystick gaming gal with like short hair and her Jubilee friggin' yellow coat, and like, her favorite place in the world is Radio Shack.
Hell yeah.
She's a little bit of a nerd, and so it's like that character is not going to be helpful in combat, but she'll be in the van feeding you the map of the location you're trying to break into.
Right.
Right.
I
like those kind of characters because they just make for a very different level of story.
And I love, as a GM, by the way, loving characters who use the utility stuff. I mean, I noticed Shadow talking about utility spells, and recognizing the value of utility spells and not overlooking them. A guy actually who's doing this right now is Brad Bollier, who just joined my Adventures in Middle-earth campaign, has been playing his character Bolo Brust Hook, and loves, like food and cooking, and has other things too. But so like has been doing stuff like using bags of flour at the right time. And I'm like, hell yeah, give me all of that. Because there is a sense, I think, that not only does it flesh out his character, but it's something that is unexpected for people that are expecting to be like, all right, he pulls out a quarterstaff, he's going to attack, he's going to do this amount of damage or this lack of damage. So having characters that don't just function around combat, or that don't function around a particular method of the way that combat is deployed, I think is really interesting. So yeah, I dig that very much. Okay, Rising Tides asked, have you ever played or GM'd a game where the ending, whether on stage or off stage, was about the player's struggles to clean up the mess they made in the campaign? I have not much, but I will say, Rising Tides, that the campaign that I'm going to be playing after Curse of Strahd is finished, which is likely to be a high-end, high-level campaign, which is a return to my Tyranny of Dragons campaign, which preceded Curse of Strahd. So it's going to go back to the world of Ryuvi. It's going to go back to the world of, post-Tiamat and all that kind of stuff. That is going to be dealing with some cleanup, and it is called Palace of the Red Pasha. I'm really excited about it, actually. It's going to be dealing with a couple of higher-level things. I think it's meant to take them basically 13 through like 15 or 16, and that will probably conclude the adventures of the Infinity and Beyond in that particular world. But so I will get a chance to see them cleaning up the aftermath of this is what happens after we've destroyed the big bad. And I tend to really like stories like that because you get to see, it almost reminds me of DLCs for games. Mm-hmm. I've been really loving the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt DLCs. They're so well done. And I love them in part because I already defeated the Wild Hunt. Like, I already dealt with that. These are also important stories, but they're important, more individual stake stories as opposed to, we do this or the world comes to an end type of stories. And so, yeah, I am going to be doing some of that.
Yeah, I would say,
yeah, it's going to be sweet. Rising Tides.
I'm a firm believer in, like I said, I'm a firm believer in endings. So there's many a time, even when campaigns have been ended, my players are like, there's going to be another season, right? And I have to look at them and go, no, this is it. This is, and that's okay. Like, we have to swallow that pill and we got to accept this for what it is. But I would say actually season 3 of this Coriolis campaign is the answer for all of the things that they got involved in season 1 and 2. But the upcoming Coriolis game that I'm running is going to be shorter, so I did 7 or 8 episodes the first time around. This time I'm only doing 4, and it is what I call those epilogues. It's an epilogue game. So in the last Overlight campaign, they worked their way up the shards and they ended in a place called Nova, which is at the top, but it's basically a desert shard nearest the Overlight, the light that beams down on all things.
Yep.
And they're stranded. They worked their way all the way up, had all of the support, they delivered the thing, the ritual was done, and then the Nova Pendra were like, deuces, and they peaced out, and now you've got these 4 heroes that have to find their own way off a desert shard. So it's going to be about the escape from Nova is what it's called. And so, yes, it is partially about that, like the wake of their choices. Even though they technically finished their mission, but even with the completion of that mission, there's now repercussions and things that come behind that, and they still made other choices in game that seemed small and insignificant that are actually going to be huge now. So
Yeah, no, that's neat. And that actually sounds like it's going to be really cool. Yeah.
is there a Pirates of Dark Waters game? I'm going to tell you that I am currently working on a very big project regarding Pirates of Dark Waters for hopefully 2021. That's all I can tell you because I don't have the rights yet.
We talked about this a little before about
We did.
like, yeah,
I talked
this,
about running. I was going to run one, but like Pirates of Darkwater is not as good of a sell to say, state funded dollars, which is what I just applied for. Overlight was a little bit easier for me to pitch. But I have spoken with a very good friend and pitched the idea, somebody that I trust exquisitely, who has put out some of, in my opinion, and content that I'll be playing, best content that's going to be coming to my channel, and we got to pontificating because we both love that, and I'm going through the process to try to gain the rights from Warner Brothers to write a Pirates of Darkwater game for 2021.
that's, yeah. And I'm like, so Geester's like, exclamation point. Can I tell you I love you, Dot? Everyone's like, yes, please. This is how I think this, and see, it's, the problem is mine is Pirates of Darkwater was not big enough for, it's not big enough to have gotten the note. I mean, it's what makes it possible, I think, for Dot to be able to be looking into this so that she could do something awesome with it. For me, that show would be either Voltron with the Lions, or would be, but see, that's already basic. It's too big, so like there's already people that are on it.
I have another one too, but I can't give away all my ideas because I know somebody out there on the internet is listening. They're going to steal it and beat me to it because they have more money and power. So, but I have not as a Dot written. I've written some modules and had some stuff published on like the DMs Guild and stuff, but like I've not written a game, and I've spent the last few years really diving deep into other people's games like Alien that have a very specific lore setting. Overlight is the exact same way. Coriolis is the same way because there is something that I'm drawn to about that it's that artist mentality. When you give an artist a white canvas most of the time and some paint, you're like, I don't know, do what you want. There's this freeze moment. It's just like, oh. Parameters actually set creativity free. And when you set the parameters of a world like Coriolis, I get terribly inspired. When you set the parameters of a world like Overlight, I find inspiration. And so I think for me, there are two shows about the same time as Darkwater. Well, I say that. It's later than Darkwater. Pirates of Darkwater was what, like early 90s-ish?
Something like that.
Something like that. And then I have one from the kind of late 90s, early 2000s that I've been sitting on that I think would make a killer TTRPG.
See, that's pretty sweet.
It is Voltron-ish of the same time. How about that? But
there's like three for me. It's like Voltron. It's the Thundar the Barbarian ones that I always loved, and then the third one, which just slipped out of my is the but there's been versions of this already done, but is the D&D cartoon setting, which was its own thing, and which was not. So that kind of, those three things are all ones that I'm just like.
Well, if you've not heard of Pirates of Darkwater, let me tell you all about Pirates of Darkwater. First off, it was one of the very first American-made animes. It was a Hanna-Barbera product.
Yep. Like Thundar, which was
Thundar. So it was part of that like whole Hanna-Barbera production studio that was happening. It had, just like Captain Planet, had a killer cast of voice actors that didn't know they were going to be famous yet, like Jeff Goldblum and that. Okay, same type thing. And in my opinion, it's one of the very first American animes that really brings in diversity. Nobody looks like white people.
Yeah.
They're all tan. They have there's a varying array of just like cultures and races that are into it. It doesn't feel like American pirates. This is not Pirates of the Caribbean. This has this kind, they all use cutlasses. Their clothing is brightly colored. Everybody wears jewelry. There's this incredible style to Pirate of Darkwaters that I just think was overlooked because we were not ready for that show.
Yeah.
We just weren't ready for it. And then Hanna-Barbera passed, right? That's what, okay, right? And then the studio shut the show down early. So there was like we only got like 12 episodes of Pirates of Darkwater when 24 was planned for it.
Yeah.
So I just want to be able to, like, not a Space Ghost RPG. You guys can keep asking. Let's see, I would have been in middle school when I first started watching this. Yeah, I would have been in middle school, so early, 2000s-ish. I want to think it was part of Toonami for a while.
Wow, because that's the thing. Like 94, I was in college, so I was not, for some reason I just didn't get this thing. Yeah, Dragon. That's why you like Dot more than me. There was one other one that was going to. was gonna mention here, and I can't remember. I remember what it was.
Yeah.
Do you want to finish what you were gonna say?
All I was gonna say is y'all can keep guessing. If you guess it right, I'll tell you yes, you guessed right. But if you guess wrong, I'm just gonna keep telling you. But I'll tell you this: they have tried to. I shouldn't use that word. They've tried to relaunch this a couple times in various forms and failed miserably. And I just think they need to leave it alone and let it be TTRPG.
No, wait. You said 2000s.
I believe it was the early 2000s. Let me double check.
Was this web based first? Like, say, Homestar Runner web based?
It was it? It was not. It's no. It was not. It's not Homestar Runner. No. That would be a good one too. This is
tabletop Homestar Runner.
This is very okay. No. I lie. It was an early '90s to early 2000 or mid '90s to early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a Canadian based show.
Zombie College. I've never.
Not Zombie College. It's not Zombie College.
But the other example that I would think, as I just thought about that's been made available, is The Prisoner. The old BBC Prisoner show, which I used to watch in reruns with my dad, about this guy who's a secret agent who's brought to this, like, looks almost like a seaside villa, and has to figure out why he's been brought there, and like refuses to, acknowledge what he knows. But it's awesome, and it was so weird that The Prisoner, I think, would be awesome as a sort of root of a TTRPG. And there may have been one. I need to look into it again. It is, Josiah. It's a weird show, but it's well, I mean, on purpose. It was only out for one season, but it was a strange, almost Kafka-esque kind of thing that oh man, I dug it. Anyway, so it's good stuff. So that was obviously much older than any of us here, including me.
I was about to say, yeah. So Pirates of Dark Water would have come out first. It was 91 to 93 when it aired.
Okay.
This would have been 94 to 2001. This other show that I can't spoil all my things because, like I said, it's not Buck Rogers.
No. It wouldn't be Buck Rogers.
I was about to say, I maybe people didn't watch the show, and maybe I was the only fan of it.
Dude, Rising Tides, straight up. The Prisoner is available right now on Amazon Prime and some other places, and you can actually find some of the videos, even I think online on Vimeo or whatever. If you get a chance to watch some of The Prisoner, it's amazing. It's very mannered. The whole thing is a very particular aesthetic, but it's so well designed within that aesthetic. And Patrick McGoohan is completely compelling if you accept the manifest weirdness of it. It's basically like if you took Twin Peaks, made it James Bond and British, like British humor also. Like it's just, again,
that's a soup that I don't know you've sold me on yet.
Again, you kind of, you have to take the soup slowly, but yeah. Anyway, it's very cool. All right, one last question, then we'll get Rise Up on out for this show. So let's see.
So, chat. That means that in 2021, when I get the rights to this, when I write it, all of you are gonna back it, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. When this happens, I assume everyone here is going to be like, please.
Oh shit, a Degrassi TTRPG? That is something I had not thought about, but I would have hella amount of fun with a Degrassi TTRPG. Stop it. That is fun.
Yes, Trish, the original Prisoner. Yes. You wrote a negative review, Josiah. Yeah, you have to stick with it a little bit. I guess it frustrates. I just kind of go with you just kind of take it all on and you're like, okay, this is weird. Like, I mean, so was Dark Crystal, right? Like, Dark Crystal was weird as hell. And you just kind of deal, I guess. Thank you so much for the resub, J-Reb. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, what can I tell you? So this originally was produced for, this show was originally produced for YTV from 94 to 2001. YTV. In 2015, it was picked up it was picked up again in 2015 for some really crappy stuff. That's all I could say. For some reboots that didn't land so great. Yes! Thank you, The Rising Tides.
Look at them. Oh man,
they're
reboot.
Like,
oh!
Yo! Yeah, reboot. I think reboot would make for a perfect TTRPG because you'd have two sides to your character. You'd have you'd have your character, and then you would have your game character, and games would drop out of the sky and you would like suit up and then get to play through the game as this other statted character in your suit. Like, come on, would that not make like the perfect setup for a TTRPG? And let's just talk about the fact that the baddest ass bitch ever was Hexadecimal. Hexadecimal was the baddest bitch known. Like, somebody asked about cosplay earlier. Mary Poppins be damned. I actually have a permanent sticky note on my monitor that says make a Hexadecimal cosplay. So
that's like everyone's just like, hell yes. Well, you got some people who really love this idea.
It's so good. Yeah, right. YTV from 94 to 90 for 01, because that's where it was like super duper popular. And then I want to think that it was picked up, and I don't think it played as part of Toonami, but it was like bumped up next to it or something. So yeah, the GameCube drops from the sky, and you like press your little thing, and you like suit up, and you go in to play the game. And that game could be a racing game, or that could be a survival game, or that could be any game you wanted it to be. But I just think it would make for such a cool
I barely
experience.
remember Reboot. I don't this is another one of the ones that I'm like, I just barely remember.
I love it. I love it so much. The names were so cool. Like Dot Matrix was one of the characters' names, and like Hexadecimal. Actually, I want to think that Hexadecimal, I read this somewhere, that there was like a tidbit of information that like Hexadecimal was one of the very first. Let's find out if that's true. Who voiced her? I don't even remember. But that show was so good. She's the self-proclaimed Queen of Chaos, and is a virus operating out of Lost Angeles. I love that. And a major antagonist for Reboot. She's Megabyte's sister, another great character named Megabyte, serving chaos to his order. Like, I just love it. For some reason in my head, I feel like Reboot was one of the very first computer animated television series, which I think actually I read somewhere that Hexadecimal was I think Hexadecimal was the first female computer animated bad guy. Like female.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I love her. She's very cool. And I want to play her.
Well, you got people fired up about it in this way.
Yeah, right? Like, come on, a Reboot RPG would be so hella cool. So those are two projects that I'm tabling right now because I just can't, I can't do it all, and I got to get through this grant. But I think 2021 for me looks a little bit more like starting to not just produce more content, but to produce, like to start writing some games for all of you, because like there are some settings that really inspire me, and I want to give them to you. I mean, I've got a backlog of ones I should write. Like I've got my Anchorman campaign that I'd love to put out for people to be able to use for Fate. I started writing that one and just never finished it. I've got one called Fate of the Appliance Wars, which is basically the Brave Little Toaster.
I remember you telling me that.
Which I think is very personal to people as well, and so I just find a lot of interest in other people's, like, these worlds that they set up that were so important and impactful to me, like growing up. Their stories are the ones that inspired me,
right,
to tell stories. You know,
I love these. These. It was actually reminding me a little bit of the stuff that for me that was closest to that probably was Assignment Impossible, which was my kind of homage love to Mission Impossible and those spy shows that kind of fit in that way. But yeah, that was true. You liked Beast Wars as Homestuck with a Baby.
Yeah.
Mask, Beast Wars, and Reboot. Yeah, and then who is it that was talking about the and then Dragon Spear asked quickly about Farscape. So I actually need to double check because there may have been a Farscape RPG. So Farscape, by the way, right in the same wheelhouse as Dark Crystal for obvious reasons because of the Henson effect and everything. And I like Farscape, Dragon sent me a bunch of Farscape stuff that I've been looking at. But is there a Farscape one?
RPG.
I thought there was, but I didn't know how much traction it got.
It's got a 4-star rating on DriveThru. Okay,
well Farscape is very odd, and the problem with Farscape is I've always liked the characters, but it's very gooey science fiction, which is very triggering for me. Like I like Farscape, as Dragon knows, but honestly, like I have a limited shelf life with it where I want to watch some of it. I'm like, okay, now I don't want to watch it for a while. And it's like a lot of people, as Dot just said, love gooey science fiction, like creatures ripping out of chests like aliens. I am not in that camp. Like give me more of the kind of space
Yeah,
opera-y,
you couldn't entirely take it serious. So there are a few reasons that I love Farscape. The practical effects are out of this world.
Yeah,
The hair and
dynamite.
makeup, the puppet work is incredible.
Conceptually, it's great. I mean, there's the,
And I think I really loved when Farscape got a little darker. Surprise, surprise.
See, I
where you've got
liked it less
Crichton like
when that
dealing
happened.
with his mental state here in space and realizing that he may never make it back home. Like,
Right.
what does that mean to be lost to your own people? And like, I just yeah, I really love Farscape. And I'll tell you this, thanks to Dragon Con, I've had the chance to meet a lot of the cast, and
Oh, nice.
they are very cool. I've had the chance to meet the puppeteers that like I'm not gonna remember the creature's name that drives Moya.
Right, Pilot.
Pilot, thank you. Yeah, Pilot, that drives Moya. The team that makes Pilot work, because it is a practical puppet.
Yeah.
It's just cool to see that kind of thing, and I think unlike a lot of other science fiction shows of its time, like, I mean, even Babylon 5, when you're looking at other ones, there was something really unique about Farscape that a lot of people overlooked, and I really love Farscape.
Definitely, and there was something about the both the characters that worked together and the storylines, which just got progressively stranger, and kind of more out there.
Yes, it did. It got really out there for a while.
Yeah, which is interesting because they were just like willing to push whatever. And they actually had a decent, speaking of endings, even though Sci-Fi really kind of dropped them, for reasons I won't get into.
A lot of people did not like Babylon 5. That is not this girl. Another dark art like sci-fi show that I just thought was really great.
Yeah. Babylon 5 is okay. There was something that didn't quite, it always felt a little bit kind of like it was trying to be Deep Space Nine somehow. And I don't know, it never really clicked with me totally. But
my mother watched, I guess maybe, I got it, y'all. I was young when Babylon 5 came out. So like, please know that like I remember it being one of the first sci-fi shows that my mother let me watch with her.
Right.
So that was kind of like a huge thing too, was getting to sit with my mom and watch it.
That was me with the original Star Trek with my dad.
Yeah, there are a very few handful of shows that like watching with mom. Like I remember watching as much of 24 as I could before I left for college. Like she never missed a 24 episode. And then Babylon 5 was another one that I just remember always. And we watched Farscape together too. My mommy liked John Crichton.
Well, I mean,
she was thirsty for that Crichton.
Trish? What do you mean other way around? What do you mean other way around? Oh, that Deep Space Nine was trying to be like Babylon 5? Well, no, I mean, like, I'm sure that Babylon 5 may have come out before Deep Space Nine. I don't remember what the order was, but my feeling was that whatever Babylon 5 was trying to do, I thought Deep Space Nine did better, to the extent that you like that. Now, I much preferred Next Generation and original series that was going out and exploring rather than a base that everyone came to it. That was just me. So, but again, I and also it may be different now because I also like political intrigue a lot more now than I think I did at the time. And that's the thing. I like political intrigue quite a bit now, and I don't necessarily think I liked it as much at the same situation. So anyway, but yeah, there's a lot of things here that are in the mix that are really good things that we're looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Dot does next, and you will see 2021. If we could just get past 2020, that would be nice if we could just.
Claudia is definitely a super goal. I'd love to meet Claudia in person. But yeah, I agree with you. Deep Space Nine, and maybe I should go back. Like I remember it still being a little over my head for the time, but like maybe it's a second time around because Deep Space Nine just dealt with a lot of dense adult issues.
Right.
So
and had like no sense of humor in comparison
Correct.
to later ones. It was very much like, and that was partially because of Avery Brooks, who was great, but Avery Brooks, like even Michael Dorn has talked about this, like how the experience of Next Gen was basically just everyone was goofing around all the time and having a good time, and like
Yep.
Avery Brooks is just like, he's very method, like this is the way we do things, and like, so yeah, that it was a very different feel in this regard. So
man, now I want to run. Oh god, stop it. We have to stop talking about sci-fi. Stop it all. Because I'm just going to want to run everything. Now I just want to write this reboot game because I'm like, oh my god, you could totally do Meat Grinder style games for reboot. Like, I have to get off this show.
Reboot would be slick.
Stop asking questions.
This has been awesome as always, and I will make sure that we bring this to a close before we commit Dot to 60 million more things. Dot, this was great as always. Where will the lovely folks see you next on your channel, over other channels, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, so the next thing that the fastest and next thing that you can catch me in would be Monday night. I'm airing a brand new series that's going to be coming one shot a month as a partnership with my podcast, North by Northwest, called the Novellas series. We're going to be playing through indie RPGs. We're going to do little like 4-hour one shots that'll get edited down into some podcast. Actually, this feeds in. It's going to be very cool. It's kind of a new way we're trying to bend the storytelling. So for those of you that don't know, my North by Northwest volumes 1 through 5, the Library Chronicles ended, and without giving too many spoilers away, one of the main characters like stayed behind to take care of this library and is reading books to my mushroom character, who's just a mushroom. She's a mushy, and she's like growing. He's growing a new version of her. And so he's reading her all of these books. So the novella series is actually the books he's reading. So we're going to be recording the gameplay, just straight gameplay.
Neat.
And then I'm handing it over to North by Northwest. And the guy who edits it plays this character that's supposed to be reading this book. So he's going to do these cool re-edits, breaking it down into 3 parts. And then like he can stop it and be like, oh, did you hear that? Like in the middle of the gameplay, he'll be able to do fun things. So we're kind of trying to bend the storytelling between the podcast and the live stream. So the novella series starts. We're going to be kicking off with Nerdburger Games, Good Strong Hands, so you can come check that out. I've got another podcast out that I'm just terribly proud of, called Stitch of Fate. We were just nominated for an Audioverse Award for both like Best New Production, and I believe every one of our players were nominated for performance in the podcast, so it's been a pretty huge deal. So you can check that out. Awesome. If you like dark, kind of mysterious murder crimey horror, you might actually enjoy this one. That's been very cool. And then, of course, the Aliens RPG is up and fast around the corner. So starting October 8th, you can check me out every Thursday night over on Unmade Gaming's channel for 6 weeks' time. Running a pretty amazing crew through some Aliens horror. So come out and support us. And you can donate to make their lives miserable. Like I said, you get to plant an alien. You get to pick a character, audience, if you guys fill the bar. So come check it out. It should be kind of a crazy cool amount of fun. Yeah, and then later in the year, you'll see some more stuff coming. Got an Overlight campaign, got a Swordsfall campaign, and this new little Torg game that's going to be coming out where I get to play my I'm basically playing Jubilee. Let's be real.
That's pretty awesome. So that's great. So you can make they can plant a mushroom character, and who knows, they might even turn out to be a fun guy. Yeah, I got it. I threw it down. I got the joke.
This show is over. I'm turning it around.
Oh my god. I was just like, I'm gonna wind up. Said, boo. Anyway, it was a great pleasure as always to have Dot with us. You will also see Dot, of course, on this channel in 1 week for Curse of Strahd, as we are moving, as I said, into the home stretch of finishing up that campaign.
Yep.
So
and
and they're gonna need you, chat, by the way, because these next few things are gonna be some pretty intense sessions, so they're gonna need you for that. It's gonna be good stuff. So anyway, it was always good to have Dot with us, and you will see Dot again not only here on this channel but also for our vocalists and for Masters of the Dungeon next month. So chat, can we get some love for Little Red Dot? And Dot, as always, thank you so much for amazing contributions and really thoughtful comments today. And I will
mushroom enough.
Yes, there's not mushroom, but that joke in my heart. Yes, exactly. You truffled with her heart for the last time. Yes.
Oh god.
Yes. So cannot be stopped. Oh man. Thank you so much, Dot, and we will catch you all soon.
Bye, gang.
That was good stuff, man. That was a outstanding ending, chat. Well done with all of that. Well played. Oh my gosh, this was a great Masters of the Dungeon. I really enjoy talking about, because I love talking shop, as you folks know, and so getting the chance to do that with someone who's obviously has a great deal of knowledge and experience and skill at game mastering and dungeon mastering a lot of different types of games like Dot. That's just great to see. So I am very happy that we got a chance to do that. So I am going to stop the recording of this, actually, and then I'm going to start the recording, and we're going to switch over to Kingdoms of Amalur, which is day, I don't know what day, but we are well along into it now, and we're just down to main quests. So I'm going to be doing that for the rest of the evening. So I'm going to take about a 5-minute break. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop the recording, then I'll start the recording, and I will go on this 5-minute break or so. And then, as I say, I will be back to all of you lovely folks in just about 5 minutes, and we will move on to Kingdoms of Amalur. Amalur. If you were here for Masters of the Dungeon, thank you so much. You'll see episode 30 of Masters of the Dungeon next month in October, which will be myself and Dot, and maybe guest stars. We often bring in guest stars for this. People like the Rising Tides or things like that, so you might see that as well. So, but in any case, and if you have questions for us, you can always give information about that today or tomorrow. It's Saturday. Did I say that it wasn't Saturday? Next Saturday. I'm talking about other Saturday. I know about this Saturday, but anyway, so I will be right back to you folks in just a little bit. Actually, let me stop the recording on this first of all. Hold on one second. So I'm going to stop the recording.